like I'll know that you guys can hear me and that like it's pretty clear and all. In case like it's not, please let me know via the chat or like send like a thumbs down or something like that. Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. So let's start off with an introduction from my side. I'm Gabriel Samuel. I'm currently studying in NLSIU. I'm in the first year of the 3-year LLB program, and gave NLSAT for my entrance last year. And essentially, I was from our information, I was probably the top ranker for Part B, and I scored 49.5 in Part B. And yeah, and my overall All India rank was 23. Yeah. So those are my credentials for this. And basically, what I'll be here to show you today is essentially a bit about how NLTI and how I personally teach this thing, Part B, and the basics of Part B so that like you guys get an idea. And no matter like this thing, what happens, you'll at least have a better idea of what Part B is and what are the dominant strategies are for it. So firstly, before we start, does anyone have any questions before we start about Part B or whatnot? Okay, I should probably start by introducing what Part B is to you guys. So I have a presentation ready, so I will bring that up. Okay, so can everyone see my screen? Can everyone see the presentation? Okay, so Renita has asked how to scope +8 in Part B answers and what are the hot topics for essays. I wanted to know whether we have to put a natural POV of a given passage or our personal opinion is to be put as an answer. So, okay, one second, hold on. How to write proper answers, how to score +8 in Part B answers, and what are the hot topics for essays. And I wanted to know whether we have to give a neutral POV of a given passage or our personal opinion is to be put as an answer. Okay. So, firstly, a lot of these questions are actually the first two questions are obviously very similar. And that comes into the structure and the formatting and the actual content of a Part B answer that we'll be going into in soon. And in terms of hot topics for essays, it is hard to say due to NLSAT being a bit unorthodox in the way it performs its GK and the way it asks GK questions. But I cannot stress this enough. NLTI mocks generally have a lot of essay topics that have already been hit in the past and essentially topics that riff on previous topics that have been hit in the past. Generally, they are vaguely law-based either around a bit of light jurisprudence about on the gap between law and morality, law and society, how these two interact. And there's always generally a question like that. And there are also questions which are more topical in nature regarding current affairs. For example, when I was giving my NLSAT paper, I think free language policy was the rage back then at that point in time, and essentially that was a question that was asked in the paper. So now currently you can imagine that perhaps there could be questions on international geopolitics, given that is the rage of the moment, and but at the end of the day, it is hard to predict these things as an exact science, but you can have vague ideas of topics which are more important than others now. And also with the correct structure, you do not need to know really in-depth knowledge on everything. You just can have passable knowledge on a topic and be able to write an answer using analysis, because that is what the paper is looking for at the end of the day. And we'll get into that. The paper is not looking for exposition in terms of your essays. As long as you have a passable idea of the topic at hand, and you can extrapolate from that, and you can analyze that using given GK knowledge that you already might given GK and reasoning knowledge that you already might have. You can write an essay, a good essay, in fact, for this thing, topics, even if you don't have like like immediate statistical data to put in to put in your essay, as long as you do a well structured analysis. And we'll get into how we're going to do that soon. Okay. So, Akash Mishra, I wanted to know that Akash and Shambhavi Roy basically have asked. I wanted to know that whether we have to put a neutral POV of a given passage, or our personal opinion is to be put as an answer. Akash, I want to know which part of, are you talking about the essay or are you talking about the legal reasoning? I assume this is the legal reasoning. Akash? Akash? Okay, if it's too, like, if you're kind of like stressed about speaking in the meeting, it's fine if you just respond on like the chat. Just like, like, let me know when you do that. Shambhavi Rai, how to structure answers properly. That's going to be answered. You come to the right place. And yeah, let's get started then. All right. So Part B master class, Part B's class for today. Learning objectives today. First, we're going to understand the introduction to Part B elements, as I am to understand that some of you are not aware of some of the Part B elements. Then I'm going to explain what exactly is legal reasoning and what is expected of you in NLSAT Part B legal reasoning. Then I'm going to basically give you a bit of information on what kind of rules you can expect in Part B, what type of rules you can expect, and how to analyze a rule and how to essentially use a rule to your benefit in an answer. Then I'm going to talk to you about argumentation and what sorts of argumentations are possible. Then after this would conclude the this thing uh, legal reasoning part of this class. Then we're going to move on to analytical essays, and then we are going to discuss what is the definition of an analytical essay, what is expected in analytical essay and NLSAT, and then we're going to talk about general, more pragmatic select strategies that you'll have to practice in the paper, such as essay selection, in which order should you ideally read your question, and then we can work on a couple of sample questions after all of this. So let's get started then. Hold on. Introduction to Part B elements. So Part B is essentially the subjective part of the paper, which is essentially placed in the question paper after Part A, and it's for a maximum of 75 marks. In Part B, candidates will be tested on, first, their legal aptitude and reasoning, and second, on the analytical ability in an essay. So there'll be 5 legal aptitude questions, each for 12 marks, and an analytical ability essay for 15 marks. And the analytical ability essay is generally about twice the length of a legal aptitude question. And yeah, that is about it. That is about it in terms of format. And basically, the thing to note is that you need, part A is obviously the qualifying part of it, is a very scoring part of your paper, so do not neglect that. But Part B is also very helpful for getting a rank, because once you clear the cutoff for Part A, then when your Part B papers are selected, you have to clear another cutoff, and then from then it gives you a rank. The better you do in Part A after clearing the Part B cutoff, Part B after clearing the Part A cutoff will basically decide your rank and whether you get in or not. So despite both being very important, it is important to give Part B also adequate focus, because what I've noticed a lot in a lot of NLSAT aspirants, and even me in my first attempt from what I remember, is that essentially a lot of people give a lot of Part A focus and are not and on top of that are unable to complete Part B, which can lead to some heartbreak down the line. So in NLTI, our goal is finish both sections. Even if like, the thing is, it's better. One piece of advice I can give you that will apply to life in general, and more importantly this paper, is that sometimes it is better to be complete rather than to be perfect. And a good thing to do with your legal aptitude and reasoning questions is set a time limit of 10 minutes. And once you start breaching on that time limit of 10 minutes, it's time to cut it off and essentially come to a conclusion. So now, what really is legal reasoning? So what really is legal reasoning? We've been going on about how you should take only 10 minutes for legal reasoning, and about this thing for points of view and stuff like that. But what really is legal reasoning? At the end of the day, legal reasoning is the method that lawyers use to apply facts to rules to facts in order to answer legal questions. The meaning of a legal rule and how it should be applied are often subject to like a lot of interpretations, and some of them are in your favor and some of them are not in your favor. And when the meaning of a rule is essentially gray, i.e., it's not black or white, it's somewhere in the middle, and it can be swung either way with enough argumentation. We, as lawyers and potential lawyers, will have to find the correct legal reason to argue for the interpretation that is in our favor. This is what legal reasoning is in general. And these are going, like, if once you get into law school, these are going to be like, this is going to be the bread and butter of your trade. In fact, you'll have entire modules about legal reasoning that you will have to study about, that purely are about legal aptitude and reasoning, right? So, um, what is expected in NLSAT? So, in NLSAT, the first thing you'll have to do is first slowly read the rule, correctly analyze it, and break it down into small decipherable parts, and understand the areas of open interpretation in the facts and the rules. So now what I want to tell you about is this. See, when you're writing legal rules and stuff, when legal rules are written, and especially even in NLSAT, when legal rules are written, they're generally kind of dense and they have a lot of clauses to them. So for example, it'll be clause A, clause B, clause B, and then an exception clause C. So what you have to do is you have to break down each of these, read them slowly, make sure you understand every little bit of them, and then understand which parts of the rule are open to interpretation. And we'll see that in an example soon. But we'll be solving this question later. But there's a definition of hazing in a question we're going to solve later. All forms of hazing, such as any action taken, situation created intentionally to produce mental or physical discomfort, embarrassment, ridicule, or possibly cause mental and physical harm or injury to any person on or off the university campus. So, when I read this question, I break it down into a few things, such as I break it in first. If you see the way I'm reading it, I'm breaking it into clauses. I follow the punctuation because the punctuation can really change the meaning of these rules. And also, when I say open interpretation, what I mean is it's in the nature of communication, really, that communication has open texture. For example, when I say a word to you, when I say a sentence to you, it can have it. There's a certain range of meanings it can have. For example, this is a very famous example in law school. But if I tell someone that if I am an administrator or a bureaucrat or something, and I essentially make a rule for a public park, no automobiles allowed in the park. So now, obviously, the area of interpretation which your mind should immediately jump to is what counts as an automobile? What is the definition of an automobile? What can I argue is not an automobile? Would a Yulu count as an automobile? Would a cycle with a motor count as an automobile? Would those small cars which kids drive in, which have like remote controls, count as an automobile? Definitely, a car would count as an automobile. A bike could probably count as an automobile. Trucks, buses, all that stuff, definitely. But what about this thing, Yulus? What about cycles with motors? Like, those, I think now they have dynamos and stuff like that. Those are fancy ones. Then what about those kids' cars? What about a tank from a war that has been decommissioned and placed in the park as a memorial? Does that count as an automobile? And these are the areas where you'll find a lot of good arguments. So that is probably the first part of understanding a rule. Understand what it tells you and understand where you can start bending its meaning. All right. Then after that, abstracting the issues out of the fact scenario. So now what I mean by abstracting an issue out of a fact scenario is, for example, in every fact scenario, for example, what happens in legal reasoning is they give you a fact scenario, such as Gabriel accidentally, it'll be a more complex, obviously, but in a sense, it'll be a fact scenario that basically reads like this. Gabriel visited his friend's house. His friend had express rules not to move his items without permission. And Gabriel entered his house, but needed to leave a note for his friend as his friend was not returning from his office, and thus left a note to tell his friend that he had been there at the house. So thus he picked up a pen in his friend's house to use to essentially write a note for his friend's benefit, so that his friend would not wonder where he was. And then after that, Gabriel accidentally pocketed his friend's pen without knowing and left the house. And then they give you so that will be the fact scenario. It'll be more elaborate. It'll be quite long, in fact. But that, in essence, that is what they will be providing you. And essentially, they will give you a definition of thievery or theft or whatnot. And then they will ask whether I should be held liable for theft. And now you have to frame the issue. The legal issue here is, should Gabriel be liable for theft, even if like his action of theft was involuntary, even if it was meant, even if his action of picking up the pen was meant for his friend's benefit? You have to frame the legal rule such that it would be written like this: should Gabriel, or even you can write, you can abstract it even more and write, a person, should a person be held liable for thievery despite lack of intention, and the if the alienation of property was by complete accident? And that is your issue. So does anyone have any questions about this? We'll be going more in depth on it later. This is just an introduction to it. But I'll explain more about the format in which you have to write the paper, but I want to just get you in the correct headspace to know what you're going to be doing, what legal reasoning is, because I feel like a lot of people enter legal reasoning without knowing what it is, and thus that essentially defines the sort, leads to like a lot of very strange arguments. So if you've understood, it's applying the rule and other implicit rules. Implicit rules would be things such as justice. Just you obviously an outcome that benefit that essentially push it, that is more just, it can be is preferable over an outcome that is more, that is unjust or unjust. An outcome that essentially that reinforces that all men are equal, all men and women are equal and whatnot, is better than an outcome that enforces the inequality of men. So there are implicit rules as well, and I will explain that to you when we're working. But what I want to show you is legal reasoning is essentially taking rules, applying it to a fact scenario, and coming to a conclusion that is in your favor, or a conclusion that you feel is correct. Does anyone have any doubts about this? Because this is vital to legal reasoning as a whole. And one more thing about legal reasoning, a lot of people do this and it annoys me to no end. You cannot take you cannot essentially pull from court rulings outside the case. For example, you cannot pull from court rulings outside a case, such as let's just say we're doing a case about theft, and the case about theft that I told you about. And then one of my students comes up to me and tells me that she has a previous court ruling on theft that she would like to use as a reason, as in the reasoning of the answer. This cannot be done. Please do not do it. Like we're very lucky that like a lot of our students, did this in mock, so we could correct them, because if they did this in a paper, it would not count for marks. In fact, it would count well. I don't think it would count well at all, because it is a reasoning paper. It is not. They do not expect you to know the law before you enter. Knowing precedent, sure, it's good from a GK perspective, but it's not to be used in legal reasoning, because legal reasoning is an entirely different game. Legal reasoning is a test of your aptitude and not a test of your knowledge. So does anyone have any doubts now that I mentioned this as well? And guys, this is only going to work, like this is going to be more useful for you if like you interact with me and like you get rid of any misconceptions you have, and we can work through doubts. There are no stupid questions. In fact, if there are stupid questions, I'd probably ask them all earlier at some point. So please ask questions.
I had a doubt.
Who is this?
Renita.
Okay, Renita. Hi. Yeah. What's up?
Yeah, so in the recent mock, there was a question about like how hazardous enterprises, they are responsible, but there are exceptions. And
Okay.
with exceptions, they were like act of God, whatever.
Yeah.
But my first point was that in India, it's not like it's not applicable, like the exceptions are not applicable. So was that a bad thing for me to do by bringing that in that situation?
Was that so? The rule they provided you said that they are liable, but there are exceptions. Did they mention anything about that thing that you mentioned about that in India there are certain? No,
I
then
just
don't
knew
bring that in.
about it from before.
Don't bring that in, because I mean, I'm sure it's good to know that. It's good to know those things. It's good to know that absolute liability and strict liability and all that stuff in India. But this is a legal reasoning paper. It's not a legal knowledge paper. if perhaps you could use that in your essay or something, like if the chance ever arises, but it's not to be used in your legal reasoning answer. Legal reasoning answers is applying the rules they've given you and implicit rules, very general rules like justice, equality, fairness. Do not or honesty, like honest outcomes should be preferred over dishonest outcomes and stuff like that. Two scenarios at hand, scenarios which are provided to you. So
Yeah.
yeah. So Renita, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. So Sadhna, Dayama, we're going to get to the format which personally has worked for me for writing answers for my papers, because it's IRAC, but it is a bit what do you call it? It is a bit personalized to the way I write. So perhaps it would also suit you guys. So we'll just keep moving on until we get there. And as Akash Mishra has pointed out, IRAC is the format. IRAC is the format. Everyone kind of has their own slight variation on it, but IRAC is the format, and IRAC will be explained soon. No worries, guys. Give it like a minute or so. But we have an idea of what legal reasoning is, what is allowed in legal reasoning, what is not allowed in legal reasoning, and what is expected of you. All right. So let's move on to what is next. Okay. Then, like you said, like Akash Mishra said, applying the rules to the fact scenario. So in IRAC, IRAC already has a inbuilt way of doing this in the sense that you already mentioned the issue. Then R, you mention the rule that you are applying. Then A, you apply that rule to the fact scenario that they have provided to you, i.e. applying the rules to the fact scenario. And in C, you come to a conclusion. Then 4, using interpretation of the rules to your advantage. In Part B NLSAT, you'll be given rules, and sometimes you'll have, even though the strict literal meaning of the rule will be against you, you'll have to essentially make arguments that what the rule really means is to tell us that is to interpret the rule in a different way, and you have to give them reasons for why the rule should be interpreted in a different way. For example, the very common example I told you about tanks, automobiles, and about the automobiles in the park. Obviously, this thing if you take the strict definition of an automobile, ULUs shouldn't be allowed in the park. But Pratishtha, yeah, we'll get there. I'll note these down, and then eventually, this thing we'll get to them. So yeah. So using interpretation to your advantage, interpreting the rule in a different way. So for example, in the automobile example, when you're trying to explain why a ULU should be allowed, you would essentially display that the intention behind the rule of not having automobiles in parks was for the safety of travelers in the park, was for the safety of park enjoyers, and was to ensure that the paths in the park do not get like clogged. However, a ULU does not pose a significant safety risk as it moves at around the speed of a cycle, and it is not a particularly heavy item, which can therefore cause a lot of damage to individuals in the park. And also, it has no chance of blocking entire routes of the park, as it is a very small item, about the size of uh, a cycle. So therefore, we should take a less strict reading of the word automobile and not include ULU in it. So hi, your question is Stuti. I mentioned that I will get to these questions once I'm just done explaining a bit. I have seen your question, no worries. Your question is visible, and I will get to you, no worries. All right, just give me a thumbs up if you heard that. Oh, awesome. Sorry if that was a bit rude. I was just in the middle of like a sentence, so I didn't want to acknowledge it immediately. But yeah, then using implicit rules, like I said, there are certain rules which are just obvious to everyone. For example, justice, honesty, and things of that sort, which essentially the courts and uh, which the courts will enforce, and which any court in the world will attempt to enforce. And therefore, we have to use those as well instead of just the rule that has been applied, that has been given to us in the question. And then structuring your answer neatly. This is what really need to go into now. So I was waiting to reach this point before I went into structuring answers. So obviously, all of you have heard about IRAC format, right? So if we had to open up IRAC format, what does it mean? It means issues. What is the issue at hand in the question? What are the rules we are applying to the question? What is the application of those rules to the facts of the question? And then conclusion. However, and I basically use IRAC format, but I obviously have a I have a slightly different way of writing it. So if you guys feel like writing this down now, it's a good idea because this is what has worked for me in the paper, and I feel personally legal reasoning structure of the answers is more important than the content in some ways because everyone is kind of writing the same arguments vaguely. It's just that how you present them is what gives you the mark, is what essentially helps a professor give you marks. Okay. So first, when you're writing, okay. So now let me go through all these questions here. Okay. As Mishra said, IRAC structure is the most preferable one to go for in the answers. Yes, but with caveats because, for example, I am a man who puts multiple. I essentially apply multiple arguments within one answer. So how my answers go is generally this. First, I state the issue as plainly as possible. For example, yeah, I state the issue as plainly as possible. Then I leave a line blank. I leave a line or two blank where I write my summary of the arguments after I'm done writing my answer. I write my summary of arguments very quickly in short form, almost like, this thing. I would structure it like this. The issue in the following case is so and so, and then I would take a stance, i.e., that and I believe or I would argue that so and so should be held liable because, and generally when I'm first writing the answer, what I do is I essentially leave two lines here and I underline them. Okay. And this is something we're going to fill in after we come back after writing our arguments, because generally while you're writing legal reasoning, you come up with a lot of arguments while you're writing the question. That's generally how the rhythm of the paper goes. So what happens is, now that we're done with the intro, in our intro, I want somebody to recount what we've done in the intro, just so I know the message is going across. I need a volunteer for this actually. Renita or anyone really. Renita, anyone.
Yes, I can go for it.
Okay, sure. Sure. Whoever said that, let's go for it. So what did I tell you about? I just want to make sure like I'm audible and like you guys can hear me and stuff like that and like you're getting the idea. So what does the intro in my format contain essentially? Okay, I'll go over it again because I'm not sure. So there's issue, and this is basically been vetted by quite a lot of people, and like it's been working for me for quite a while, even in my mocks and even in my actual final paper. It's worked like a charm, and I've been able to apply it to every question. So first issue, then my stance. So my issue will be framed as in the following question. Yes, Sachiran Sanna, a plain statement of the issue followed by a summary of the arguments and a stance. So correct. Now we'll get back to how to summarize the argument later, but right now you just need to know, leave two lines for it. Leave one or two lines for it. We'll get back to it later. And then leave a line and go to the body. So now in the body of our argument, now here comes the real meat and potatoes of your legal reasoning. So now we are going to give three arguments, to around 3 to 4 arguments in our favor that essentially support our stance. Now, there are multiple types of arguments you can make, and we'll get into that later. We'll get into that later. But essentially, the format is going to be like this. You're going to essentially list out, make reference to a rule. Either it can be an explicit rule that is given in the paper. For example, in the question that I told you about, the rule in the example about the park, the rule would be no automobiles allowed in the park, right? And then what we are going to do is, then we are going to essentially essentially make reference to relevant facts. We're not going to go really in depth into these. We're just going to make a reference to them, just so that the professor knows what we are talking about. And then we are going to make our argument regarding these. For example, I would for that automobile example, I would argue that essentially this thing. I would make a first. I would apply that a Yulu cannot be essentially. First of all, I would go for that automobile question. I would obviously try bending the interpretation in my favor. So what I would say is the reasoning behind the automobile rule is to keep people safe and to not block up areas in the park, and this thing. essentially a Yulu neither is dangerous to people, neither will it block up elements of the park. And then I will make a similar 2 to 3 arguments in my favor. So the way you structure these arguments is, I was right. Okay, I will just finish the sentence and I'll get you, Shivangi. The way you structure these arguments is, has anyone ever heard of premise, and conclusion format? So the idea of this is when you're making an argument, your premises, when you're writing them, they should automatically lead to your conclusion. So my first premise will be the rule. The second premise will be the fact scenario. The third premise will be my characterization of the fact, i.e., the first one was the rule about no automobiles. The second premise was a Yulu is technically an automobile. The third premise will be essentially, but the interpretation of the rule the intent behind the rule was to keep people safe in the park and to not block up areas. And a Yulu does neither, and therefore automatically leads to the conclusion that a Yulu should be allowed in the park. Okay. So, and then we're going to make 3 to 4 arguments like that. You don't have to write, you shouldn't write it, in fact, in premise, conclusion format. Yes, I think this will be available as a recording. It's being recorded right now. Yeah, this is being recorded right now, no worries. But yeah, so every argument you make will have to have that sort of sort of internal structure. You don't have to point out that this is a premise, and this is a conclusion, but each argument should be siloed. Essentially, each argument should be its own paragraph, and they should essentially, that entire paragraph should be one complete argument. Okay, then you are going to make 2 to 3 arguments in your favor. Like ideally, I think three. If you can do 4, amazing, but I think 3 also works. Okay, in arguments in your favor. Ideally, use the rule that they have provided you first. We'll do a question and we can explore how that works exactly, but I want to just get the idea across to you. Then the next thing you have to do is immediately you have to essentially make a counter argument. Now, what is a counter argument? A counter argument is an argument that your opponent would make. Imagine you're a lawyer fighting a case and you have made 3 points for yourself. Your opponent will also make points, right? So a counter argument will be what your opponent says. And it's always important to say what your opponent says so that you can rebut it immediately. So what I mean by rebut is after your opponent gives a counter argument, you might immediately have a reason for why that argument should not be accepted at all and why that argument is stupid. And you have to prove that you can rebut that argument right there and then. So you have to provide a counter argument from your opponent's side, and then you have to essentially cancel out that argument with an argument of your own. And then you can conclude your answer with a restatement of the stance, or you can conclude it as it is there. So that is the format that has helped me answer everything so far. I do not waver from it at all when I'm writing answers. It's always issue, stance, summary, points, my main points, the 3 or 4 points for myself, then the point for my opponent, and then I counter his point, and then it's done. I do not write a word beyond that. I don't try to write a word beyond that. And then what you do is, remember that summary of arguments, those 2 lines you left open? Now what we do is we take a look at our best points, and then we write them in really small, we write them very summarized there. For example, in this case, I would put Yulus should be allowed in the park because A, as per taking into account the intent of the rule, Yulus do not really fulfill, do not essentially pose the dangers that the intent of the rule thought automobiles would. Or you can say that Yulus do not essentially fulfill the dangerous criteria that was meant in the intent of the rule, and that duty of care and that negligent behavior, all that sort of stuff. You can just put it in quick summaries there and underline it. Then what you go to do in your question is you go and underline the keywords, because at the end of the day, like even when I correct answers nowadays, it's very difficult to read actual questions, especially because a lot of your answers that you guys write are absurdly long. And when you're correcting answers, you fatigue easily. So what you want to do is you want to make your examiner's life as easy as possible. So you're going to be underlining keywords. For example, intent of, in that Yulu example, intent of the rule. And then you can underline weight of the vehicle, and then blocking the path, and then danger. And that is it. When the examiner sees those 4 words, they basically know what you've written, and they don't need to read the full thing, and they won't even bother reading the full thing. Because they'll just understand you know what you're talking about. Move on to the next argument. So underlining and making points that are siloed, i.e., essentially each point is one paragraph, so that each professor knows where one point ends and where one point begins, is very useful. Because as I said, a lot of NLSAT Part B is about presentation also. So that is the format. I want you guys to take a few minutes to think about it. I'm going to answer some questions that have accumulated in the chat by then. Also, just one thing, am I speaking too fast?
No, it's perfectly fine, sir.
It's perfectly fine. Awesome. Okay. All right, hold on. Right. So Shivangi Sharma is asking, I was writing an answer. The question mentioned an employee who caused an accident while performing his job, but it happened due to his own carelessness. Since I don't know about vicarious liability, I wrote that the employee is liable. Was that wrong? Okay. So Shivangi, can you give me a bit more detail about the question exactly? Also, okay, until Shivangi answers, because I want to know what question it was before saying anything. Stuti Tiwari, is it counterproductive to mention the conclusion before the reasoning? Actually, I would say it's actually very useful to mention your stance before your argument, because for example, like I said, I mention my issue, my stance, and then my summary of arguments, and I make sure the professor can see my stance, because it lets him know what is coming up later. It essentially primes him for what is coming up in the question. I'd say it's a very good idea. So I always personally believe in mentioning the stance before the reasoning. And if you want, you can put the stance again at the end. It's just that I make sure to put it at the beginning, so that then, like, it's very clear that way. What is the issue? Where do I stand on it? What is the summary of my arguments? And now let me go into my arguments. Okay, Stuti? Okay. Just give me a second. Somebody's been knocking on my door for like 5 minutes now. Let me just check who it is. Okay, sorry about that. We get a lot of prank knockers in like hostel. So okay. Where was I? Yeah. So Stuti, does that answer your question like adequately? Okay, yeah, seems like it does. Okay, so Shivangi, I want you to essentially, okay, Stuti has given another question. Where I am failing is how to break down the structure of my facts to justify my reasoning in 5 to 10 minutes. My structures lacked a methodical structure and a reasonable analysis of the smallest points to build up my answer. Okay, I can run you through how we should analyze a question and how we should write answers. And in fact, I can maybe give you like an answer that I wrote for a question, and we can like see how that compares to like how you guys write answers. Okay. So, but first, I think we should actually try solving question ourselves first, and we'll get to that soon. So, in terms of format, does anyone have any questions? Because we're going to be using this soon. Like within 30 minutes or so, we're going to start using this. Okay, Stuti Tiwari, what are your questions about format? Okay, hold on. I think you sent something. Issue stance, summary of arguments. Okay. Okay. Once again, Shriji, first thing is, I want to tell you that essentially you're missing the actual arguments. Yeah, summary, issue stance, summary, arguments, counter arguments, rebut, and conclusion. That is essentially what you're supposed to follow. And then, is it essential to mention the issue if the question clearly highlights it? Yes, Tutti, it is very important to mention the issue. It's basically it's like, like in maths, before you write the answer, you have to rewrite the question. It's like that. It's basically like that. And it's always good practice, because sometimes when you rewrite the issue, you find out nuances in the issue that you can apply it for your answer. So it's always good practice, and they do look for it. Professors look for it, like desperately in when you're writing answers, because it shows the sign of like a what do you call it, a structured mind. And following a format repeatedly essentially shows the professor that you are following a format, you have a plan, this is what's going to happen. And now Yash Singh. Okay, Stuti, awesome. If anything comes up, please let me know. This is how like this works. I can only give you like guys the best of what I know if you ask me. Good job on asking so far, Stuti. So Yash Singh, should we not follow the IRAC method of writing? Yash Singh. Now my question is, how does this differ from the IRAC format?
Excuse me.
Yeah, Yash, tell me how my format differs from the IRAC format, and I will let you know how it is basically the same thing as the IRAC format, but it's designed for more arguments.
No, myself Akash here, and I wanted to ask my question which I asked at the very
Which
start of
one?
the meeting. So can I ask verbally?
Oh yeah, sure. Go for it, man. Go for it.
Yeah, as I asked before, that in part B there are approx 5 questions of legal reasoning and an essay of 15
One
marks.
essay. Yeah.
Yeah. So in essay, it's simple that we start with its plot and then go to the main body and then we make an counter argument. To be precise, in essay, we have to put a neutral point of view of any subject which is given in that essay topic or question.
Neutral
But
point of view. Okay. So I have generally sworn by what, even if you're taking a neutral point of view, it's better to mention it clear, your stance clearly in the thing, even if you're taking a neutral point of
yes,
view.
yes,
So
yes,
that,
yes.
yeah. Because
Yeah,
it's not that
firstly,
you only have to take a neutral point of view. For example, in the three language policy question that I answered,
yeah.
and in most essays I answer, I take a stand because I find them easier to defend one side completely rather than to stay in the middle. But that's a personal preference. I also, if you're planning on essentially taking a more of a middle ground approach, you have to be very careful about your arguments and you have to make sure you're telling them actual, giving real points for both sides. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Firstly, we start with an introduction of a topic which is given in given in the question, and then we put our stance, as you said, and then afterwards we put a decent
Get
amount
into
of
your
counter
body
arguments as well.
arguments. Yeah, your body arguments, basically.
Yeah, and then we put a decent amount of counter arguments as well, and then we conclude an
Yeah.
essay with a
Yeah,
neutral statements.
two to three counter arguments also is fine, and then you rebut them
Yeah.
if you can, and then end your basically conclude.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
that is what an essay is. What's the question? I'm so sorry for interrupting you.
No. Please don't be sorry. I just wanted to ask that do we have to follow the same method in legal reasoning questions, or we have to put our personal opinion as an answer and only a statement or something like that for a counter argument, or is it also not necessary that we don't even put a single statement as a counter argument? The case study which has been given, we should. Just give our point of view that what do we understand about this and what do we analyze after reading the case study. So my question was just that.
Okay, so basically, your question is: are counter arguments necessary in legal reasoning questions?
Yes, do we have to put that counter argument? Is it
It
necessary?
gets you more marks. It gets you more
And
marks. It gets you more marks,
okay,
definitely. I like all examiners look for it because basically in legal reasoning, you have to account for your opponent's side, right, as well. You
exactly,
can't just simply say what you want to say and completely ignore the other side. You have to take an argument that your opponent would say and improve that your arguments are better.
exactly. Thank you,
Yes.
thank you.
So counter arguments are necessary, and I feel, frankly, personally speaking, I think they're kind of what got me the like between there's generally a gap of like like 6 to 7 marks between me and like a lot of other people, and I think me including counter arguments in my legal reasoning is what got me those 6 to 7 marks. I think personally, and maybe like I formatted my answers well or something, but I think what do you call it? My counter arguments, the fact that I bothered to put counter arguments
Yeah,
gave me a leg up because there were just more points to mark
sure,
in my questions. There was more. It was a more thought out argument in general.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay.
I had
Um.
one question.
Yes.
So when we restate the principle, like, do we need to restate the principle or do we just write according to the principle this is the case?
Yeah. So you have to refer to the principle, not restate it, because that way you're just writing what's already given to you. Especially since the rules are generally kind of long.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that just refer to the rule. And if there's any specific part of the rule you want to refer to, just kind of refer to it, like summarize it really quickly in 3 to 4 words. Like, especially the way I would write it is taking into account the rule, the rule provided on, let's just say, strict liability, or this thing, liability falling on companies for so and so. Then I would go to my reasoning. Do not write the whole rule again. Do not like bother with that. It's a lot of effort. So I feel like I need to show you how exactly to apply the rules. Shivangi Sharma once can. Okay, hold on. Okay, guys, once can just yeah. Okay. Who was I talking to right now? Like, who was I talking to on voice call, right, on the voice bit right now?
Renata.
Okay, yeah. Do you have any more questions about that, or like
No,
just could you
I
if
have
that
dogs barking.
pardon?
I have dogs barking, so.
Oh, koi nahi. Just let me know if like my answer was enough or whether I should expand on that before going to other people.
No, it's okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Chalo, theek hai. If there's anything, please let me know. I'm here for that only right now. Okay. Shivangi Sharma, I will get to you because yours is going to take a bit more time than everyone else's, because like, you've actually given me a question and I will solve your question. Don't worry. Just remind me. But I will get to you because everyone else is asking like a question I can directly answer, but for yours, I'll have to think a bit before answering. So, Yash Singh, in IRAC, you're not taking your stance into format, but in NLSAT, I would suggest you need to put your stance in your argument. Otherwise, it's difficult to know what sides you're arguing for. IRAC format is actually more so for taking questions in law school where you don't know the conclusion before you write the question. In NLSAT, you're going to be essentially defending a stance. So I would suggest keeping your stance first, so that your the stance first. You can even write it at the end as well if you like. You could say, and thus so and so should not be held liable at the end, or thus so and so should be held liable. But I would always recommend putting a stance first. It's always worked for me. So obviously, there's a bit of like concern that, oh wait, this isn't strict IRAC. How can we use this? Now let me share you a screen that where I can essentially like show you exactly what's going on and why this is essentially still IRAC but in a modified format. Because I don't want you guys to think that like I'm pushing you away from IRAC. I'm asking you to use IRAC, but in a modified form that's worked for me. So let me just present something else. Okay. So can you see this blank screen that is on screen? Just give me a thumbs up if you can, please.
Yes.
Okay, awesome, Yash. This is Yash, right?
No, it's Akash.
Akash. Okay, awesome. Yash is a pure text guy, but okay, okay. So okay, here's how it goes. Let's just say first, question is here. Whatever, we get the rule, whatnot, and whatnot. We're writing an answer now. Okay. So first thing we do is we state the issue, and we spend some time listing that. Okay. Then we spend some time essentially showing our stance, and we spend some time writing that. Then see, the next thing we write is the summary of arguments, which we leave blank until we come back after we finish writing the question, so that we can actually write down what we wrote and not be. The issue with some people is sometimes they write their summary of arguments before writing their answer, and then when they write their answer, they get more points, but they can't. They find it difficult to add them because they didn't put them in the summary. So I suggest always writing the summary after you're done writing your actual answer. So then this is basically your intro. Now, when you're going to the body, let's just say you're making argument one. Argument one. What you're essentially doing is you're taking the rule, and then you're essentially applying, taking the facts, and then you're applying them. Then argument, and then you're coming to a conclusion there itself. About as per this, so basically, like I said, and then for argument two, you are referring to a different rule. Then you refer to the facts, you apply them, and you come to a conclusion. So basically, what you're doing is you're giving them 4 very short, and you do the same for argument 3. you acknowledge a counter argument, and then you essentially rebut it. Conclude, thus XYZ should be held liable / accountable, etc. Okay. So, Yash, now do you understand why this is basically just IRAC, but like it allows you for more adding more points. It allows you to add more points because IRAC is designed basically for applying like one rule or like 1 point generally, and this is basically a way of applying IRAC for multiple points. Basically, it's basically the same thing, but like uh. Okay, so Yash, by IRAC method, you meant we follow a general approach of issue, rule, application, or analysis, but then conclude. But you mentioned stance and summary. The thing is, for me, I was able to finish these really quickly. So I don't know. So basically, counter arguments are very necessary. If you're going to cut anything from this format, cut maybe summary of arguments and underline your points really. Yash, so basically, your point is that this takes a lot of time. You're not able to finish. Is that correct? Yes. So basically, I was able to finish this, but obviously people are different because like, I think I was like, very like I was in my competitive exam streak. So I was doing a lot of these papers like repeatedly. I was applying for other exams. So I had the timing down. But if you want to cut down something from this, cut down the summary of arguments if you want. That you can cut down if you want, but do not cut down counter arguments. They're very important. I feel like they get you more marks. Because in like NLSAT, like you'll be scrounging for every mark. NLSAT Part B, you'll be scrounging for every mark because it's very difficult to really get like out of 12 marks, you'll be lucky if you get like maybe you'll be very lucky if you get 8 marks actually. You'll be very lucky if like you hit 8 marks. So you want to do everything to reach that point. So yes,
One doubt here, please.
yes, please let me know.
It's not about the format exactly. I have a doubt regarding the content of the conclusion.
Okay.
So you've stated that XYZ should be liable or be held accountable, full stop. That is just the conclusion. You're not including the summary here. Is it
Yeah.
possible that we shift the summary along with the stance instead of belonging it with the stance to the conclusion?
I would say the thing is, the reason, like, I understand where you're coming from logically because, like, you're kind of thinking, how do we already know the stance before we write the argument? Doesn't that sound sus, right?
Right.
But the reason I put the stance in the summary in the top of the thing is because when you're naturally reading a question, you start when let's just say I'm an examiner and I'm reading a question, I start from top to bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, my idea is I want to let them know as much information as quickly as possible at the beginning. Like I want to let them know, oh, I'm using a duty of care argument. Oh, I'm using a negligence argument. Oh, I'm using an interpretation argument right at the beginning itself, so that they can just go look for those underlined words in my answer and they can just tick, tick, tick and give me the marks for them instead of having to like hunt through my answer for them. Because the issue is if you put them at the bottom, okay,
Okay.
they might have to like read your conclusion and all first and then go back to the top to read your full answer and then look for them. So this is just a personal pragmatic choice on my part, but I think it makes sense from like a correction point of view.
Okay,
Do
so we are
you?
basically providing clarity beforehand.
Yeah, we're providing clarity beforehand. We're making it as easy to read as possible because like these papers are hard to correct actually, and like they have to do a lot of them. So you want to make when they read your paper, they should be in zero discomfort when they're reading it. That's my logic about it. They should, in fact, like when they're done with it, they should be in a better mood than when they started, right?
Understood. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
It's more for clarity. I understand where you guys are coming from. Like, oh, how do we know our stance and conclusion beforehand? But it's something like, like, isn't it sus if we know our stance beforehand? But it's something, it's more for pragmatic purposes, really. So it's good to make your arguments, structure arguments this way. If you want, you can mention your this thing stance again at the bottom. That is perfectly fine if it makes you more comfortable. But yeah, it's not all that necessary also because each argument has its own conclusion basically, and we can go out. We'll discuss this even more. But when we're actually solving a question, but does anyone have any doubts so far about this and how we go about things? So Yash, okay, Anudisha Jaiswal. Hello, Anudisha. Okay, if you're a bit shy to speak in front of the class, just like mention it in the chat. As I said, I'll get to it. I'm going to go deal with the backlog again.
Please take some questions of Stuti. She has been asking for very long in chats.
Okay, I will get to that. Like we keep getting a lot of new messages, so like one second, hold on. Is that what Anu is that you, Anudisha? Or is that okay? Let's this thing take some questions here. Let's take whatever questions are left. Okay, so Yash Singh, I hope that answers why this thing. Why this is basically just Iraq, but like more clarity is provided. If you want, cut down the summary of the arguments. That's more of a stylistic and clarity choice. But don't worry. But like, please keep counter arguments, and I feel like they are a very scoring angle. And yeah, and the thing is, when you argue, like it sounds like a lot, but it's actually you just make like even when you write answers, you make multiple arguments. You just don't separate them into paragraphs. So all I'm asking you to do is separate your arguments into paragraphs. That's it. That is all I'm asking you to do, and to make explicit reference to the rule you're using when you come to that, when you're making your argument. That is all I'm asking you to do. It is very simple, and it's not as long as it looks. Cut out the summary if you like. Keep the counter arguments. Okay. Stuti and then Avishruti. I'll take Struti's questions and then I'll get to Avishruti and Shivangi. This thing. You're next on the list once like this is done. I'm so sorry about that. It's just that these are just like very quick to answer. How did you manage to include heavy CA in the essay in such little time and also analyze it? So so current affairs. When it comes to current affairs, what I lucked out in my essay also, because I got an essay topic that I was very like, I wouldn't say I was very aware of it, but like I have heard a lot about it.
Sorry to interrupt, but by CA she means counter argument.
Counter arguments, okay, but then okay, awesome. That's easier to answer, thank God. But okay, so generally how the essay format goes is this. Okay, see, for my essay, it generally goes like this: issue framing, like either. Can you hear me, Stuti?
Oh, she meant current affairs.
Okay, Stuti, can you just tell me what you meant? I'm so sorry. Wait, has she mentioned it somewhere? Current affairs. Okay, okay, awesome. She's mentioned in her text. So sorry, guys. Yeah. Okay, so naturally, like so the thing is here, I was doing UPSC preparation before this, so that probably plays into a bit about how I knew enough to write an essay. But I firmly believe, because even that topic which I was writing about, I didn't really know that much about it. I had maybe 3 to 4 like very unique, like 3 points that were like a bit like in depth, but everything else I was making was a general point. So for example, my question was specifically about this thing. My question was specifically about the 3-language formula. And so I had a vague idea of what it was about. I knew, and the thing is, in the question itself, they kind of explained what the idea was about. Now I had to give reasons for myself. So first of all, I framed the issue about what is the 3-language policy, 3-language formula, and policy. Why is it so important? Why is it so important all of a sudden? This is just to like frame the idea in my head all of a sudden. Then I framed my stance on it. Do we have to mention current affairs topic related to topic? Do you mean like, generally it's pretty like clear in the question also what they want you to refer to. So that's generally not an issue. Like for example, in my 3-language formula question, they just see the ask about 3-language formulas. And sometimes they ask you like more legal based question, more like, legal theory based questions, such as like interruption between this thing, between what do you call it? Between law and society, and then you have to specifically mention what you're referring to. But in cases like this, like the 3-language formula, it's very clear what they're referring to. Every like 3-language formula is like, it's in the question itself. When they don't mention it in the question, then you have to explicitly mention what current affair idea you're implanting and using in your essay. But other than that, you don't, you kind of have, even if it's in the question, you kind of have to mention it again. It's like in maths, you write down the question before writing an answer, right? It's like that. It's just to show that you have a clear mind. So in my thing, what it went like was this: what is three language formula and policy? No worries, Kusum. What is three language formula and policy? Why is it so important all of a sudden? Then I frame my stance, which was I was against the imposition of the third three language policy. And then I went on to my body. This essentially took maybe 50 to maybe maybe this took 50 to 40, 50 to 60 to 40 words, maybe 40, 50, 60 words, maybe at max. Then I went to my body. And then the way I analyze it is this. So when it comes to three language formula, for example, for you guys, what is like, how would you analyze this? How I analyze it is this. I broke it down into an economic aspect. What are the economic aspects of this rule? What are the justice aspects of this rule? What are the political aspects of this rule? And each of these was a separate paragraph in my body. Okay. What were the pragmatic aspects of this rule? What are the pragmatic problems, or what are the pragmatic issues with this rule? And then, okay. And then you can add as many as you want, really, depending upon how much you know. So for economic, I was able to make the point that this thing. So this is one of the pieces of information that I knew from, like, other places, from like my GK preparation for other exams, that education is a state subject. This would essentially mean, by imposing three language policy, this would essentially mean the center is imposing an additional burden on the state without adequate compensation. That is one thing. And given that it is a state subject, they have to pay for it themselves. So naturally, this thing. Now, I only knew one detail, but I can stretch that on for a while. Therefore, it's therefore unilateral burden imposed by state, imposed by center. Okay, right? Then what happens after that is I'm thinking, what else can I talk about economy? Now, obviously, teaching three languages is costlier than teaching two. That is something everyone knows, right? It costs money to teach a language. Second, it is costly. It's costlier to teach the third language rather than just teaching two widely used languages. Now I'm thinking, what can I do on top of this? Now, obviously, we can make an economic argument that what is economics about? Economics is about the essential best way to utilize resources, right? How should we utilize resources? Now think, do you think there's an issue with this, with essential state governments wasting their money teaching a third language when they could be teaching future ready subjects, such as an increased budget on maths and science, or logical reasoning, or this thing, civics and stuff like that? So naturally, now you can pivot from your second to third point like that. So what I'm saying is, your essay doesn't only have to be you vomiting facts at them. You can just use your brain and answer, frankly. Even if you have one point, you can use your brain and answer like snowball and answer from that. Resources can be used better. Resources can be used better. Can be used for other more utilitarian topics, subjects. Right? Awesome. We have three arguments in economy, and this is just this thing. And this is just like the first part of our argument. So now let's move on to justice now. So when we go into justice, okay, does anyone want to suggest arguments, or should I keep going on with this? Does anyone want to suggest arguments? It's a good time to try. We can see what sort of arguments are coming out, and like test your arguments on me. Why do you think the three language formula? So everyone the thing is, the question kind of told you what the three language formula is. All I've added so far is that education is a state subject. That's all I've really come up with from outside the paper so far, and I've gotten 3 points out of that. So do you see the sort of it's not out of the box thinking, it's just logical reasoning that you can apply even to writing essays. So now, justice. Is it fair? Yes, it is. It counts as imposition. It can be seen as imposition on states which do not wish to study, to teach a third language. Okay. Then on top of that, second, it takes, then what else can we say? This is, in terms of justice, what else can we say? It is unjust to, okay. And one more point I can say is this. Use your brain, okay? Imagine a state, okay, which state has the biggest problem with three-language formula? It's probably Tamil Nadu. Yeah, India being multilingual country would be a counter argument, which you can use for later. Yeah, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. I'm from Tamil Nadu, so like I automatically went to Tamil Nadu. Yes, this is also burdensome on people, burdensome on people who don't have money for basic education and need to learn usable skills immediately. The thing is, Shivangi Sharma, in the question, actually, I was about to use this in a paper, but then when I read the question, I realized that in that article, their formulation of the three-language policy essentially included regional languages also. Hello. Once again, yeah. Good job, guys. Good job. Just slow down for 1 second. Let me like tell you guys something. So Shivangi's point was essentially about undermining regional languages, but in some formulations of the three-language policy, they said you can teach any language of your choice. And I thought about that, right? And I thought, oh, that kind of does solve the problem of imposition, but then that doesn't solve a pragmatic problem. So then I got a pragmatic argument from this. Okay, from Shivangi's point, I got a pragmatic point. Okay. So now think about it logically speaking, like on the ground reality. Let's just say in a state like Tamil Nadu, okay? There's one dominant language, Tamil. There's one like this thing. What do you call it? There's one like, you know, I'd say like language that's used because of globalization. That's English. And now other languages that exist in Tamil Nadu are spoken in very small amounts, and there's a lack of teachers there. And frankly, there's like a dearth of teachers there, and there's a dearth of native speakers there also, I'd say. But what language has like presence throughout the country, big, has at least enough presence throughout the country? So what I'm saying is, naturally, states are going to, like, even though there's an illusion of choice that you could choose something other than Hindi, states are going to have to choose Hindi just because there are for other languages, there aren't enough teachers available. For example, if we went to Jharkhand and you wanted to, and like Jharkhand wanted to teach Kuduk or something like that to people, to its students, it would not be able to because there just aren't enough Kuduk teachers. You would have to teach Hindi as a third language, right? Or if you went to this thing, some other place, to Tamil, and there's some regional language they want to teach, you just can't teach it because there aren't enough there aren't enough people who teach that language. So you'd have to choose a more dominant language like Hindi, where you can get teachers easily. And this thing, yeah. So this thing, illusion of choice immediately. Okay. Then it can be burdensome on people who don't have things for money, political, and need to learn useful languages immediately. Political. Now here's my second piece. I use the same point again, like the same point which I marked earlier here. Education is a state subject. So I know what it means to be a state subject, right? I've studied my 10th standard civics and whatnot, civics and stuff like that. So once again, how do I highlight this? Okay, okay. Education is a state subject. I'm going to reuse education as a state subject. Education is a state subject, and thus comes within the purview of this thing, state legislature and whatnot, yada yada. Okay, and therefore letting the center decide on these situations can lead to loss of lead to weakening federalism. Okay, so I've used the same point basically again. Okay, and I've gotten like another point out of it because I'm not focusing on putting out the fact. I'm focusing on what the fact tells me. What can I infer from the fact? And this is how you're going to have to write a lot of your essays. And frankly, this is the easy way to write essays. personally don't believe in like, like GK is very useful, and if you can have it in your answer, it's amazing to have it. But I also feel like it sometimes takes away, like in your effort to like put down a lot of facts on paper, it kind of takes away from like this thing, your reasoning in the essay. Yeah. Okay. So now let me see what arguments you guys have suggested. Okay, where was I? Okay, undermines regional languages. Sure, that can also be a political thing actually. Undermines undermines regional languages and can lead to their death. I think a few languages in Bihar have also actually almost gone extinct basically because of that. So that you can maybe make an example of that. So Shivangi, good point. Then Anupam Tripathi. It is Hindi for the South Indian states, an easy connected language like Sanskrit for the northern stage. So Anupam Tripathi, what do you want to tell me by that? What is your inference from this? You've stated the fact that Hindi will probably be the third language for southern states, and for northern states it will be something like Sanskrit. So what does that tell me? Anupam, buddy. Bro. Okay, Anupam Tripathi, I'll wait for you to get back to me. Ashi Yadav undermines secularism. I'd say it undermines federalism more than secularism. Violation of the right to speak. I would say violation. It's not really a violation of right to speak, as the state isn't really cracking down on you for saying something. It's trying to impose languages, which does technically come under its purview. Which is whether imposing languages comes under its purview is still a question of legal relevance at like in this day and age, and is very hotly debated. So I wouldn't say violation of right to speak or anything like that. I would say it is a violation of federalism and the rights of the state to decide its own language, to decide what it teaches its students. Then Dushyant Singh, extra burden on children who don't get benefit from the imposed language rather than learning something future ready. This is a good economic argument, and this is a good practical argument. You can put it in the pragmatic argument section. And Stuti Tiwari, I think we addressed this actually in the pragmatic argument that like realistically, realistically it's going to be Hindi. Like nobody's going to find like a lot of teachers for Kuruk or something. So this thing, like you said, Stuti, it is going to be Hindi. There's an illusion of choice, and that's what a lot of states are afraid of. That like they'll agree to something on the terms of like learning a regional language, but then they'll be eventually forced to learn a state language because of a lack of teacher, like this thing Hindi due to a lack of teachers. Then Dushyant Singh undermines their native language. Very good. These are the sort of points we have to use. You took a rule and then you thought about what is a natural occurrence. Like you took like the fact and then you thought what is a natural inference from this. It undermines a native language due to excessive burden. They get frustrated by imposition of Hindi, like of northern language like Hindi on southern states, where frankly there is no use. Like if you go down south to Tamil Nadu, like there's hardly anything written in Hindi. Nothing is written in Hindi. Nothing, almost no documents are in Hindi. The only real use in Hindi down south is to talk to people from the northern areas. But then some people would argue that English would also act as a reasonable bridge language. Are we getting points? And then, okay, now let's go into counter arguments. Now, I don't go into counter arguments a lot. I just treat counter arguments like this thing, another set of like like political, just like basically another just one paragraph for counter arguments. I would say bridge language, this thing, it will connect it can help connect the country. Then two, you can argue that it will help if strictly enforced, it can essentially boost regional languages. Yes, if you know Article 246, you can mention it. That's the thing. That's the beauty of this type of essay, okay? Dushyant, that's the beauty of this type of essay. So basically the idea is without a lot of GK, it still works because logically you're walking the examiner through what you have inferred from the question and what basic general knowledge you have. But if you have Article 246, you can put it in there and make it an even better thing. So at the very least, you have a decent essay, a good essay. You can make it you can like add to the aesthetics of it and add to like the knowledge, like how knowledgeable you seem in the essay by referring to like this thing. Specifically, you can mention languages that have gone extinct, like Kokborok and Tripura, or you can mention Article 246. But the structure of the essay is still solid even without all these things. You still understand what the writer of the essay is trying to tell you, even without these extra details. Therefore, you can write this thing. You can write essays without GK also. Like, not completely without GK, you need an idea of it, but you can write essays with very little GK. Like, out of here, I think what I've like, oh yeah, sure. Obviously, let me just zoom out a bit. Dushan, by the way, very good points. You should use that. Should we present arguments and points in paragraphs and use submit? Okay, so this is something that people keep asking me. I prefer that you write in paragraph. Since it's an essay, you have to write in paragraph. I think you just it's what's expected of you. But I know you want to have the clarity of point form, and I have got you covered that. So what I generally do is when I'm writing, for example, if I'm writing the economic argument, what I do is this. I write in terms of economic analysis, and then I underline economic analysis, comma, education is a state subject and states have to bear the burden for it. Therefore, unilateral burden imposed by the center should not be pushed towards the state on the imposition of a third language. And then just underline unilateral burden so that when the examiner is reading it, here's what his eyes are looking at. Economic analysis, education state subject, unilateral burden imposed by center, done. He won't bother. It'll be like reading point form. So here you get the benefit of point form and paragraphs because like it looks nice, you get a lot of continuity and it's an expected format point, and you get the benefits of point form by underlining like those very specific things and basically making each, like you see, like economic arguments, I've made it one paragraph and then I will leave space or like I will separate the paragraphs and then I will do the justice argument so that it's very easy to read. So you get the benefits of point forms and you get the benefits of paragraphs. You're writing all the economic and arguments in a paragraph, but then you're separating it before the justice paragraph. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah, Shivangi, does that make sense? Okay, Dushyant, yeah, good, great point. Great points, everyone. I'm just going to zoom out if you guys want like this thing. Let me just add the counter argument stuff, and then you guys take a screenshot so you guys get the full format. Okay. Can't think of another third counter argument, but like even one or like two or three counter arguments is fine. Really, you don't have to go too much into counter arguments. Just make sure you've done something to acknowledge the other person's side. One or 2 points at worst thing is do 1 point, but maybe put 2 or 3 points if you can. Whatever you can do it. Just acknowledge that there is another side to your argument, then rebut them. Won't connect. Languages. Second. Strict will be very costly. And three. What else can I? Does anyone have another rebuttal to give me? Type it out if you feel more comfortable typing out, but say it also. Does not reflect the choice of the. Frankly, this does not reflect the choice. Oh yeah, another counter argument is it's good for the enhanced cognitive skills. Good point, Shivangi. Skill. We can argue that this thing there are more cost-efficient methods. There are more cost-efficient and beneficial methods to improve methods to improve cognitive ability. They're more cost-efficient and efficient when to improve cognitive ability. Yeah, and then you can conclude for the above reasons: eco, justice, pragmatic, and political reasons. I believe policy is not. Essentially, you're trying to say it's not a good idea. Should not be implemented. Okay, so Yash Singh has said it is designed to benefit those who might otherwise be linguistically disadvantaged by ensuring exposure to widely used languages without erasing the. Yeah, that is also another counter argument you can make. So see, this is the beauty of it. You don't really need a lot of current affairs. It's good if you have current affairs, but you don't need it per se. Now I'm going to just put this on one page, and then we can zoom out. You guys can zoom out and take. I'll zoom out, and then you guys can take a photo of it. 1 second. Let me just 75. Yeah, this is it. Tell me when you guys are done, like send me a thumbs up when you guys are done. But was this like this thing, essential idea of going through all these, going through the essay like stanza by stanza, how you write it, useful? So what I want to tell you is like, don't get scared when like you don't know like exactly like a lot of details about like the essay you're writing about, because you just think, use your brain. You guys have all got good ones, I'm sure. Think, what does this mean? Logically, what does this mean? And then you like the points will come to you. Like logically, how would I argue against this? Okay. So for writing essays, okay, what I'd suggest is two things. Okay, I would suggest first reading the editorials of papers. Those are very handy because this structure is naturally built into those editorials. I got the structure from there. Okay, and then also I would suggest doing a lot of NLTI mocks because I'd say like the NLTI mocks, like first of all, there are a lot of them, so you can mostly cover a lot of current GK topics without like, what do you call it? You can cover a lot of GK topics without like, what do you call it? Without like, at least without like showing up to the exam and like seeing something for the first time in your life. So I would suggest a lot of NLTI mocks for that. Then also, we also give feedback on these papers. So I'd suggest and we can like check you on your this thing on how good your points are and stuff like that. So I would suggest reading editorials and doing mocks. And I'd say essay is primarily sorted that way. And if anyone wants to like, if anyone wants to know more, please feel free to ask questions. We can get that soon. Does CV influence the selection process? I'm actually not this thing currently. Like I'd like to keep the class like focused on Part B exactly because that's where my expertise is exactly. There might be new regulations about CV that I'm unaware of, and therefore I do not feel the need to comment about them. But don't worry, rest assured, I'll ask Anish to send somebody who is an expert in these matters to you. But as I said, I don't think I should be making a stance on this because in my year, CV was not important. But I just want to make sure that, but like I said, my main area of expertise is Part B, and I want to stick to that. All right. But rest assured, I'll ask Anish to send you guys a little bit of information about the CV. In my year, it was not important. Other than editorials and mocks, what else can we do to further enhance your writing skills? See, writing is a bit like running in that way. Like if you've ever tried to teach someone how to run, you can't really do much else other than make them run and correct them after they run. So other than that, I would suggest like sending it in for correction, getting the like answer keys and whatnot, and then essentially taking a look at what your what feedback is given, and then correct them accordingly. Because it's a lot like running. Even if I sat down and read a textbook out to you about running, it would be it wouldn't make you Usain Bolt, right? The way you become Usain Bolt is by running again and again, right? So it's a bit like that. But if you want to really get good at like writing, another way to do it is read, like again, reading, but you can be more deliberate in your reading. For example, what I do is, because I also like, I also write short stories in my spare time and all that sort of stuff. And so if I want to get good at like writing a short story, what I do is I read very successful short story writers. And in the same way, you will read people who make very successful arguments, i.e. editorials, or like, like your mock answers and all that stuff. And you will analyze how they write it. You will essentially analyze, oh, this is the issue framing. This is the issue framing. This is the stance. Oh, this is one argument entirely. Let me mark it. This is the second argument entirely. Let me mark it. Because that way you're analyzing it and you're actively engaging with the reading. That's the best I'd say you can do other than writing. But obviously, I feel like balancing active reading and writing are the main goals of like your preparation, and also developing a bit of GK in the background. But then that will obviously come via your editorials as well. And I think you have very good, I think NLTI in general has very good teachers for GK. I think my classmate Sobik, who's like really good at that sort of stuff. And I think he's scored quite well in Part A from what I remember, is dealing with that. So keep in touch with your GK via Part A preparation and editorials and whatnot, and active reading and practicing mocks. That's all you can do, and that's all anyone can ever ask of you. Anything more is frankly like snake oil. Okay? So solid examples, got it. Okay. Okay, was that, did Yash ask that question? Oh, it's in. Okay, okay. Anupam Tripathi, will using words and statements mentioned in the question convey our argument goes against us or not? To convey, wait, will using words and statements mentioned in questions to convey our argument? Using words and statements mentioned in the question is good, in fact, I'd say, especially if the words and statements you are using are pulled directly from the rule. Because the idea is, with rules, okay, a lot of it is open to interpretation. So you want to argue about it exactly the way they've given it in the question to you. Okay? Like, so you should be using a lot of the words in the statement itself. You should, and when it comes to facts, you want to use the facts that they've given you. So it's a good idea to use the words and statements in the question. Just don't reproduce entire paragraphs from the question. Analyze, use the words they've given you in the question, but don't like reproduce entire paragraphs or entire sentences and stuff like that. Okay? Stuti Tiwari.
Hi, Gabriel.
Hi, oh.
I wanted to know something. That there's hardly any time left, like 30 days left in the exam. And as far as my problems go in the essay writing structure is that I get a little too descriptive about the problem or whatever stance or whatever argument I'm providing them. So it
Okay.
kind of takes a lot of time as well as space for me. So I end up not writing a lot of things that do come in my head like a few minutes later. So to uh, to handle that, what I try to do is I literally like just mention the fact and elaborate on it in like 2 lines. But then again, in the paucity of time, I get like max to max 10 minutes to write the essay. So how do you
Okay.
suggest that I practice incorporating more analysis and less description in the answer?
Okay, yeah. Obviously, if you're at the end of the paper with 10 minutes to write your essay, you're going to be panicking, right? So, okay, so first bit of advice, I'd say leave 10 to 15 minutes to write your essay. 15 minutes is like enough, frankly. You don't need more than 15 minutes. But also one thing I used to do, because I used to know like kind of like I'm a bit of a slow thinker sometimes. Like I need like a bit of time to come up with points. So what I used to do is before when I started the paper only, I would flip to the back of the paper and take a look at the essay topics and make my decision about which essay I'm going to write. And then like while I'm writing part A and while I'm writing the legal reasoning, at the back of my head, like the idea will be fermenting. I'll be thinking, what do I know about this? And like my mind would be kind of opening like a flower, like like to be kind of blooming, right? So like I'd be thinking, like, for example, when I started this, I was kind of blank. Like, okay, all I knew was that, like, Tamilians don't like it that much. Okay. All I knew is that my family didn't like it that much. And then slowly, as like throughout the paper, as it went on, I remembered, oh, state subject. What economically, what does that make sense? What is what economically, what does teaching a third language entail? Oh, costly. Oh, resources could have been used elsewhere. So by reading the essay first and then going to do everything, I'm making your decision first and then going to do everything else. It gives you time to come up with points. And then I suggest when you're writing an essay, keep a little space at the bottom of your paper, like just write it there and like write rough work or something. And then just whenever you get a point, just quickly rush there, write it down, and then go on. And at the end, you can just like quickly number them and then see how many you have and then write your essay. Because essays do take time to ferment. To make actually, and I got around that by like leaving it in the back of my head for it like like sometimes you can think about things while you're doing something else, like at the back of your head. This way you're thinking about your essay while like you're doing everything else. So that's how I dealt with it personally, and I was able to like smash out an essay really quickly in like 13 to 15 minutes, or like 13 to like I guess 13 minutes it probably was. But yeah, um that's how I finished, at least. I felt like thinking about the essay beforehand, choosing the essay beforehand was a good idea, and thinking about it beforehand was a good idea. Because imagine being like in your situation, last 10 minutes of the paper, make a decision about the essay, and then you're probably going to agonize about that decision as well, because you're going to be stressed. And then on top of that, you have to find out points on that spot. So obviously you're just going to vomit out what you know instead of thinking about it. So make that decision early on, remove the decision, because at the end of the exam, you're not going to make good decisions. You're going to make bad decisions at the end of the exam because you're going to be in a rush. So make those important decisions early on. Okay? Suti, I'd say that's how I can help
Yes,
you. And also,
yes, Gabriel, this helps a lot. But you
I,
know what? I can probably attempt this more while giving a mock or like while attempting the
I would
essay.
suggest that,
What
yeah.
what
But
I asked you was that how can I help, like how can I prepare for it? Like there, one thing I've started to do is I read legal articles, and
mhm,
suppose there is an article on hate speech. Okay, so the
yeah,
article elaborates how to distinguish hate speech from dissent and more such things, or sarcasm or humor. So
mhm,
I understand that how they're like getting into the nitty-gritties of the issue. So this is
yes,
how I understand, how I'm understanding ki ऐसे I have to break down the subject, and ऐसे I have to write on
analyze
it
it.
along the lines of
Yeah.
the passage given in the question. So what are other things that I can do to prepare myself for a legal, for an analytical essay?
Okay. So basically what you're saying is you read outside to get points in order to write for your essay. Obviously, good job. And you're
Yeah.
asking what else can you do in order to prepare for an essay?
Yes. Yes.
Mm, in terms of analytical essays, to be honest, I feel going like obviously like now you're going in with a fixed format, right? Your issue,
Yes. Yes.
yeah. So going to a fixed format helps because now you know exactly what you need, right?
Hmm.
In terms of other preparations for an analytical essay, mm, see a sort of general sense of awareness about like what like a general sense of awareness is obviously a good thing. Like uh it's tough to say exactly what else you need because you mentioned reading. You've mentioned, this thing having a formula, having like a set structure. You've mentioned essentially this thing, uh, having enough time to think it through by reading it at the beginning of the paper. And you've mentioned like essentially uh, basically having enough time to analyze it and to put down your analysis. So I can't really think of anything else you would actually need to write an analytical essay. Like I feel like I just don't know what exactly you're looking for. If you could let me know like where exactly the troubles
Yeah,
from.
yeah. I will elaborate a little more on this. I'm sorry that I'm taking so much time and other
Hey,
people are not able to ask their questions.
it's fine.
But
Please go
yeah.
ahead. Yeah.
So, okay. So I read the best answers that have been uploaded on the portal. And I usually get around 8 or 9 marks in the essay, whereas other people are getting around like 12. The best answers are getting 12. So
Okay.
their answers are mostly very current affairs oriented, very like they suppose they're writing about the, let's say, developed countries being more responsible than developing countries in ensuring that climate change and the effects are have been have been taken care of. So their answers are very current affairs oriented. Like
Like
they will
they're
just
involving
write
CBDCs.
down,
Yeah.
yeah, the ABCs of whatever is happening and how it's impacting. But I do not get that much time, or even like I do not have I'm literally panicking in the whenever I start the second half of the paper. So I don't know how to I don't know like how to practice getting so much current affairs into my answers at that like 5 minutes in the end 5 minutes of my answer. This is where my problem lies. And it's
See,
basically then then your like very niche habit of describing the problem comes out, and you just jump past the solution oriented part, or how you you should fit in the current affairs.
Okay, so what you're saying is the best answers do have include a lot of current affairs, and they
Yes,
also this thing.
the
Pardon?
answers are built upon the current affairs, like
Built
one
upon the
thing, two
current
thing,
affairs,
and
right?
everything is connected, and the answer is just like 2 pages long. It's
Yeah.
barely
Your answer
300
is not
words.
supposed to be long. Your
Okay,
essay is supposed to be at max to twice the length of your legal reasoning question, and your legal reasoning
okay,
is like maybe one side. So your essay should be maybe 2 sides at max. 2 sides, maybe 2.5 if your handwriting is really big. But
okay.
like, yeah. So that's one thing. So
Hmm.
basically, what you're saying is when you say everything is connected in their answers, what do you mean exactly?
Okay. See, now that you are asking me, I'm not able to provide you the example because I do not know that many current affair facts, and I have been reading a lot of newspaper, but they just don't come up in the while I'm giving the mock.
Okay, ठीक है.
Yeah.
So I would suggest, see, obviously, including current affairs can get you more marks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I feel that like having a structurally sound and logically sound essay that has good structure will get you at least 80% of the way. I feel like current affairs will add like obviously like if I could like mention exactly which section gives like education to the state and which exactly some statistics would be good, but my essay still functions without that. So what I want to tell you is um don't be too worried by like if like the current affairs like you like essentially putting the current affairs into the question is difficult especially in the exam because I would be like if like I'll be very honest like a lot of what people like a lot of the very current affair heavy answers that people write in mocks for some reason don't like show up in the paper because like either stress or time or whatnot. So if you can include it, amazing, nothing like it. But this is to teach you how to write a good essay, even in the worst case scenario. And about your point about like going to descriptions, I would say it's a good idea to make a rule for yourself. I will only talk about this. I will only describe the problem in my introduction. After my introduction is over, I will only be analyzing it. So, for example, here in my introduction, I've only essentially this would be maybe 5 to 6 lines. What is the three language formula and policy, and why is it so important all of a sudden? And then my stance would be maybe 2 lines, and then I would move on to my body and forget about like all like the detailing done there. And I understand that it's not a very satisfactory answer that like I basically told you like if you don't know CA, you can't add CA to the answer. But I want to reassure you that it's not all that necessary. Like a structurally logically sound essay will get you through and will get you at least 80% of the top marks, which is better than like worrying like writing a very descriptive essay and like essentially what do you call it? Writing a very descriptive essay that doesn't make any points and thus like the professor like doesn't really know what to mark you for. So Stuti, I want you to keep talking to me. So for example, in this case that in
Mm-hmm.
this essay we were writing, we'll give this like maybe
Mm-hmm.
5 more minutes and then we'll go to a legal reasoning question after this, okay? Because I want to
Okay,
show you
okay, sir.
that. But
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you in this
Mm.
thing, where would most of your time and space go in this entire essay that I've written here?
Okay, so firstly, I would be a little confused that how would I, because I gave this exam. I gave the last year all attempt.
Oh, same.
Yeah, but but I could not clear the part A because I scored around like 46, 47.
Okay.
Yeah. So the moment I read this question, the only thing that came to my mind was West Bengal, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu are the states who are opposing the three
Yes.
language policy, and
Why that
nothing
is.
else came to my mind. I
Okay.
attempted the media question.
Yeah.
Okay, so firstly, I do not understand what introduction. What is meaning of introduction? Do I explain the three language policy? Do I explain why
Yes.
social media is harmful?
Okay.
What does it entail?
So I'm going to explain how introductions work because they kind of set up a lot of your arguments later. What is three language policy? So first, this is what like is this is about going like this is where most of like your GK stuff will come in. But luckily, a lot of it is explaining the question. Basically, explain the policy as basically as best as you can and as quickly as you can. Okay, so what is three language policy?
Okay.
Essentially, it's a state imposing a mandate on the center imposing a mandate on state governments that they have to teach three languages of their choice. And this was given in the question also. Three languages of their choice. And this thing, many states have opposed. And this thing, they gave a few more details about like which parliamentary session and all, but like I didn't think that was very relevant. And you can mention about the state's reaction to this. And
Okay.
and then why is it so important all of a sudden? You could frame the issues of like essentially this thing. You can quickly write about states resisting, and if you know anything, you can add like you could mention some protests or whatnot,
Okay.
and you could mention like even if you don't mention like a specific protest, you can just say there have been protests in various points of the country, just so you can prove that that this does cause political instability in some way or the other.
Okay.
That states have resisted, and personally I know a bit about Tamil Nadu because I'm from there. So like I could add
Okay.
it adds to like now because I'm thinking from the entirety of like Tamil Nadu or other countries in general and other states in general. Sorry, my bad. But like, and adds to the already tense situation between state governments and central governments. And I think this is pretty common for a lot of Indian states that like unless they're from a very few set of states, they do have a bit of like a standoff with the central government over a lot of things such as budgetary allocation and all. And this is just one more like this thing, coin to the pile. Okay, tense situation.
Okay.
And that's why this is blowing up all of a sudden. Okay.
Okay.
Then you frame this would take about maybe 5 to 6 all of this would take about maybe 5 to 6 lines so far, 5 to 6 lines, and then you would frame your stance in another 1 to 2 lines. So already you've hit like maybe 8 lines on this, and I think that's enough really. That's all the GK that's frankly all the GK I would use, other than like education being a state subject. So I think you have to limit yourself. I think you have to build rules for yourself in the introduction. Like, do you understand what the introduction is now? Like, what are you getting the idea?
Yes. I understand it now.
Yeah, basically, in the introduction, you're not asking what, why, and how. You're not asking why, how, when. You're asking what. Introduction is just for what. And then your body, you're asking why. Why does this happen? How is this happening? And then in the conclusion, you're saying, therefore, this is the answer. So,
One question I'd like to interject. I'm really sorry.
Of course.
Is that the example I picked up was the developed countries should pitch in more money for stability in the times of climate change.
Okay.
So, what introduction would that be? Like, would I explain climate change, or would I explain
Okay.
the comparison between developed and developing countries? That's my question.
Okay. What was the question again? So sorry, could you say it slowly so that I can like this thing?
Yeah, sorry. So I said ki my question is that if the question is around the lines of should developed countries pitch in more money, funds, countering the climate change that is happening right now, and so what will be the introduction? Like, will that be explaining climate change, or will that be how we are comparing developed countries and developing countries?
So just to repeat, the topic is basically how developed countries essentially I'm so sorry, can you just write down a topic? I'm so sorry, I'm having trouble focusing right now. If you could just write down the topic. Okay. Yeah, just write down the topic. I'll frame the intro for you, and I'll answer some other questions that are coming up on the chat.
Yes.
And then we'll get to legal reasoning after this, okay? Shivangi Sharma, does using advanced vocabulary such ultra ultrawires instead of beyond their power help in securing higher marks? I would not say so. It obviously makes your answer look nicer, but like I would say it's not something you should put a lot of attention on. Using a few words here and there is fine, but I would not suggest overusing them because sometimes people wrongly misuse them also, because these legal Latin terms have like very specific meanings. And I feel like sometimes when people overuse them, they answer them wrong. They use them wrong. So what I want you guys to do is stick to simple language. But like, if you are sure a word is used in a particular scenario, then you can use it, and that is not compulsory. I don't think it is designed like legal reasoning is not designed for that sort of showboating. It looks nice, so obviously if you want to, you can do it. But it's not like something I would say they would be like, oh wow, he used ultra wires, I'm going to give him I'm going to give him a lot of extra marks for that. It's basically about the reasoning at the end of the day. It's good to add in just for style points, basically. Just like it can save a mediocre answer, but it won't change a good answer into like a great answer. It can make you seem more knowledgeable. That's all about it. That's all there is really. It doesn't do too much for you. No worries, Shivangi. If you don't know it, it's fine. If you know it, amazing. But be sure of it. Because like I've had a lot of people come up to me talking about strict liability and then get it completely wrong. So like not you guys, but like other people that I've taught. So like that's my favorite example to use. Okay. Pratishta, I am not okay. Should Okay, Stuti, this is an essay that we can actually like write pretty well without too much information. So I will come to that. But yes, Pratisha, I'm not scoring good marks in part B like single digit marks. So is it possible to score 35 plus in 30 days, and how? You can definitely start scoring 35 plus in 30 days, especially if now you're on single digits, because see, I want to first ask you, where are you going wrong? Like, are you not finishing the paper? How much of the paper, how much of part B are you writing? I understand that you're mentally fatigued by the end of it, but keep that is a part of the exam, and you kind of have to prepare against that. You have to do so many mocks that it gets boring. That like, imagine if I made you run 5K every day for the next like month. By the end of the month, you would be basically ready for it, right? No matter like if I made you run 6K, you'd be basically fine. So it's like that. Mental fatigue, there's no other thing but to practice, 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 and also remove decisions. You don't have to think about format. We will give you the format. We are teaching you the format. Like I taught you a format for essays, use it. Do not think about the format yourself. Just think about what you can do to fill up that format. Legal reasoning questions. I've given you a format. Don't think about how to format your answer. Just remove that question from your mind. Just think about how I can fill in this format he's given me. So that is one way to remove mental fatigue, and also practice. There's just after some certain things, there's just nothing to do other than practice. Okay, Pratisha, does that answer what you're saying? Basically, the idea is remove a lot of decisions. Remove as many decisions. Make an essay choice as quickly as possible. Decide how much time you're going to use for everything. And decide how much time, decide what format you're going to use, and then you write your answers. Like you should have those things decided before you walk into the exam. Obviously, you have to choose your essay inside the exam, but try to choose that at the beginning only. So you have time to think about it so that that decision is gone away from you while you're still fresh. Okay. And single digit scores are definitely not normal. So I'm 100% sure you can make it to 35 or even 40 really, just by finishing the paper. Finishing the paper decently with like good format and decent points. How much time can we give to Mac Part B? Okay. This is a very important question that I wanted to get to you. So you'll be practicing this in NLTI mocks very soon, and I would suggest that you guys try this. I believe for part A, you should give 1 hour or 1 hour, 10 minutes at max. Okay, that is at max you can give. And in mocks, you should hold this very tightly, because in the exam, there's a good chance that it goes a bit haywire. For example, me, when I prepared for like mocks, I would finish part A in like 1 hour, maybe 1 hour, 5 minutes. But in the exam, it took me 1 hour, 15 minutes, just because I was scared. I was very scared. My watch broke in the middle, all that sort of funny stuff. So like there are real-time effects of the exam at the last minute. So you have to be careful for that. But what I want you to do is aim to finish part A in 1 hour, 10 minutes at max, and then dedicate the rest of the time to part B. And if you want, after that, if you've got anything left in part A after you finish part B, go back for it. But I would suggest finishing part A first completely, and then go for part B. Spend 1 hour, 10 minutes on part A, and then spend 1 hour, 20 minutes on part B. And that's, I think, the best you can do. And that'll add up to like your this thing, 2.5 hours for the paper. So, Kusum, does that answer your question? 1 hour 20 minutes to 1 hour 15 minutes is about fair, because it's 75 marks. So think about it in terms of 1 mark for 1 minute. Okay? Kusum? Okay. 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 Hold on. Pratishta, yeah, thanks. Sorry, some of these answers are a lot about practice and all, but like NLTI is very practice focused. like a lot of is a very practical exam at the end of the day, and you kind of have to practice a lot of these things repeatedly in order to get the groove of them. Like for example, for me, my most of my preparation was just writing mocks. Actually, I just wrote mocks. Like I started pretty late, so I just wrote mocks every day until like the paper. So you can perhaps do that. Then next, okay. Can you answer my previous note vicarious liability and the answers I made, mistakes I made? Okay, Shivangi, hold on. Um, Hold on, I'm just finding like everything. This is insane. Shivangi, yeah, I was writing an answer. The question mentioned an employee caused an accident, while performing his job, but it happened due to his own carelessness. Since I didn't know about vicarious liability, I wrote that the employee is liable. Was that wrong? And the question was regarding this thing. He got into a fight with a person while driving home as he was employed as a driver. So what I want to tell you is, see, you didn't know the word vicarious liability. Now, so you said that the employee was wrong, that the employee was to be held liable. Um, Personally, if you have a lot of strong arguments for why the employee is to be held liable, it's fine. But if you chose that stance just because you weren't aware of the term vicarious liability, I would say that is bad because there are other ways to explain that term. You don't need to use that exact phrase. You could say, master servant liability, or you could simply state in a rule that the masters do bear liability for the actions of their servants and whatnot. So this thing, hold on. I would say it's not wrong to say that the employee is like, what do you call it? It's not wrong to say that the employee is like liable, but if that's only if you have if you have arguments in that favor. If you chose it just because like you didn't know the term vicarious liability, I would say that is a mistake. Because so Shivangi, what exactly was the issue here? Like you chose because you didn't know the term vicarious liability, you said that the employee was this thing liable. What were your points? I need to know what your points were. Shivangi? Okay, I think she's writing something. Pooja, I think there's a recording of the session and it will be like distributed because like it is being recorded right now. Then okay. If you guys are willing to give me 15 minutes, we can run through a legal issue. But after I just finish writing this intro for this thing strictly just to show that it's possible. Shivangi, I need to know what arguments you made. So if you can make a small list of them and show them to me, that'll be great. Because I'm not going to say that saying that the employee, like both sides are very defendable. You can say that the employee is liable or that the employee is not liable. It depends on how you defend it. So I can't really say if you've made a mistake unless I see your arguments. But to say that the employee is liable just because you did not know the word vicarious liability, I feel is limiting yourself because you can define the definition. You can use other definitions to write that answer, like master servant liability, employer-employee liability, because they're not looking for like legal terms from you. They're just looking for, what's the word? They're looking for the reasoning from you. They're not looking for legal terms from you. It was a frolic on its own. That is a very good point. That is what I write. That's what I wrote in my TOTS paper. And that is frolic of its own is a very good point. That is a good point. Anything else? Okay, until Shivangi and Stuti, like while I'm writing Stuti's answer, I'm looking at Diksha's question. I lacked in framing cogent arguments uh, while writing in legal. So can you please suggest some tips and practice to improve it? Like you mentioned that treat rule as premise. Can you elaborate it to make well-structured arguments? Okay, stick with me for like 15 more minutes after class. Like, I mean, for this class, and we'll just like, and I'll go through a question with you really quickly. But what do you call it? I'll just finish this intro thing for Stuti so I can finally be done with it. because I feel like she's been waiting for a really long time. Shivangi, that point is correct, but you need more points also. Like if you write frolic of his own, and then give me more points on why you are defining it as a frolic of his own. Like how are you proving that it is a frolic of his own? Okay. So give me more details on what you said. If you ideally, if you can send me like your argument, send me your this thing, part B answer on Telegram. I'll get back to you on that. Actually, do you guys have my Telegram? Like, as he voluntarily did that act and got into a fight. That is, yeah, it was not a part of his job description to go and get into a fight with some dude. He did that because he was annoyed, or so whatever happened to him, he went and did that. It wasn't to protect the goods or something. He got into a fight on his own. Therefore, it is a frolic of his own. That is a good point. So this thing, what's his name? Shivangi? That's a good idea. Give me more points that you wrote, or send it to me on Telegram. I'll give you my I'll give you my my Telegram thingy, my Telegram handle or something. Just like like send me the answer there so I can give you like better like feedback on that. So Diksha Tharwal, I lacked in framing cogent arguments while writing in legal. So can you please suggest some tips to practice and improve it? Like you mentioned that they treat rule as premise. So can you elaborate it to make well-structured arguments? Let's do a question right after this intro, and we are going to go do a question. And Diksha, you are going to show me how you argue. Okay, Diksha? Just say yes or no, or give me a thumbs up or whatever. But we are going to troubleshoot your arguing a bit. Okay? Define climate shapes and how it affects. And now, Stuti, we're right. How to prove to you that even though I don't know much about like climate change and whatnot, I can still write we can still write an intro on this. Countries developing. This will take about maybe 3 lines. Okay. So Stuti, we're going to first define climate change and how it affects different types of countries. For example, developing countries often face higher burdens due to this thing. Due to this thing, what do you call it? Lack of climate control technology. Polluted this thing. Lack of clean energy technology. Lack of less efficient and this thing. The higher dependence on crops / tides, etc., which are very dependent on climate change. And then so we've discussed like how like different countries essentially are affected differently by climate change. Now we can talk about how about the question at hand. Okay, now the current system. Now this is one thing I know about climate change, about how countries deal with climate change, and it's a very common basic idea. There's a system of common but differentiated goals or something like that. Common but differentiated what's it called? Common but differentiated goals for essentially funds. Hello? CBDCs or something.
Differentiated responsibilities, I think.
Common but differentiated responsibilities. We know this. So now we're going to talk about now we're going to define what the current situation is, define what the current ideas about distribution of burdens are. Distribution of what do you call it? Funds to deal with climate change is, and that is CBDR. And this is and we know the different definition of CBDR, because like basically what it means is what it breaks down to is basically he who can give more gives more. You give as much as you can. Okay, but essentially developed countries will essentially take more of the burden, take relatively high amounts of the burden as compared to like developing countries, because developing countries still have the issue of taking out like a lot of people out of poverty, right? So then you define why, then you define this thing. Then I think this is enough for introduction. Then you make your stance clear. Let's just say you are for developed countries define what this means. This basically means developed countries take higher burden. Okay. Then you clarify your stance. It can be anything really. So Stuti, what was your stance?
My stance was that developed countries should take a higher burden as
You're
they
in
are the
for
ones who got, yeah,
you're in favor of CBDR.
yeah.
Okay, awesome. So now that's your intro basically done. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now let's go. Let's break it. Now let's break it down into points again. Let's do an economic analysis.
Okay.
Economically, why does it make sense that this thing, developed countries should essentially pitch in more? First of all, you can say that developed countries should pitch in more because first of all, developed countries have higher means,
And
and
they've already been spending a large part of their GDP for defense purposes. So climate change should
yeah,
top
should be
that.
yeah. Climate change should have like at least relative importance, right?
Yeah.
Have
Mm-hmm.
better and better technology to actually combat this thing, to actually combat climate change. So this thing, they should be donating more funds and technology.
Mm-hmm. And here comes where the US took itself out of the Paris Agreement and the US aid.
Yes. Now you know that piece of information. So now you can say, as opposed to US style unilateralism and isolationism. Okay.
So before I wasn't going into economic and pragmatic, and I was just breaking it down into paragraphs and going into whatever idea that struck me while I'm writing. So this was
Yeah.
the mistake I was making. This,
Yeah, it's always
okay,
good to
made it clear.
organize your thoughts. It's like yeah, because you get like automatically when you limit your scope of what you're thinking, you get ideas. Now, can we think of more
Yeah.
economic points? Then, second of all, we can say that this thing, developing countries have large parts of their economy that are still developing countries still have large impoverished populations, and therefore they focus on getting those impoverished people out of poverty before focusing on climate change.
Yeah.
Developing impoverished higher priority. Okay. Okay, awesome. We have two economic points. If we sit for like another minute, we're probably going to get another economic point. But let's move on to justice for now.
Yes.
Justice. Okay. Now we can argue that this thing it is fair because developed countries essentially caused a lot of global climate change historically. Developed countries.
And we can bring in colonization perspective also into this.
Yes, that is the GK you bring into this. See?
Okay. Yeah.
When you think organized, like stuff just happens, man. Yeah, my
I
dad
can
used
see
to tell
that.
me this, but like, yeah, I never got the message. I have to say, but like, fair because developed countries historically contributed a lot. Colonialism led to impoverished countries, which led to like the economic argument again, right? Therefore, again, higher priorities. Then any other arguments for this thing?
Yeah, technologically, they should be more cooperative with the developing countries as they have exploited. I am telling it in a very layman language, but they have frankly exploited a lot of.
They should be more open. They should be more open with technology due to prior exploitation, and this thing. Okay, fair enough. We've got like what 2-3 points. I think 2 points, 2 good points, one kind of like sub point. Because they should be open to prior exploitation also technically comes under colonial, if you think about it really.
Yeah, yes.
So then what else can we write? What else can we write? Economic justice. Okay, pragmatic. Pragmatic is always obviously my favorite because like you can write a lot of very basic common sense points. Pragmatically, developing.
Yeah, we should include the SDGs into this.
Yes,
Sustainable Development Goals and how they're pushed by the developed nations, but yet they do not receive so much attention in the name of in the terms of money.
Yeah, so SDGs are pushed by developed nations, and this thing everyone entered into the agreement to actually achieve these SDGs because we were under the assumption that we will be cooperating and that like developed countries would help. But now this new stance of developed countries not helping essentially reneges on the deal, right? And you can say that this is
Okay.
even this is like a bit of a betrayal in a way, and you can put it in
Yeah.
justice also. Which way now sudden betrayal. Betrayal is unjust. Okay, because a lot of developing countries made significant investments under the premise that like developed countries will help them in this goal, and now suddenly developed countries are trying to pull back, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, pragmatically, developing countries will refuse to take climate control action unless at least proportional uh, this thing effort is being taken by developed countries. Because developing countries also have the pressure to grow and maintain strength and parity with developed nations. So they would not
Yes.
shoot themselves in the knee on purpose uh, to done by developed countries. Okay. Then what else can we do? What else can we do? What else can we do? Pragmatic. What other pragmatic reasons do we have for why this thing? Climate change. Why climate change should be done by? Okay, climate change should be done by this thing. What do you call it? Developed countries, because you could also argue that frankly,
Carbon emissions. Carbon emissions.
uh, expand.
Most amount of carbon emissions are emitted by the developed nations like USA and China.
That is true in a historical perspective, but I think now they might have been dethroned. I'm not
No,
sure.
because of their dependency on taking flights for everything. For
Okay,
example, like Taylor Swift has been the celebrity who has had most carbon emissions because of her Eras tour. This is something I don't just know top of my head.
okay.
So carbon emissions.
I wouldn't suggest making an argument that says, developed countries emit more because of like travel, because I think travel is a relatively, travel might not be small, but it's not the largest source of I think carbon emissions. I think the largest source would be power generation and stuff like that, right? I'm not sure.
Yeah, but like
You could say
traveling through planes generates 4% of carbon emissions that are emitted in the
amazing.
on the
Have
planet.
this detail, so you can add it into the
Yeah.
essay also. Now we can say that
Okay.
developing countries will definitely refuse, given the parity in lifestyles experienced by citizens of developing and developed countries. If
Yeah.
unless developed countries also take relative efforts to curb climate change. Again, another sub point of this.
Okay.
Then what else can we say for pragmatic arguments? Let's see.
ये तो
Pragmatic.
counter argument हो गया यश. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I haven't.
Are there counter arguments? Somebody mentioned a counter argument. Oh, awesome. Greenhouse gases circulate globally. Greenhouse gases circulate globally. So it doesn't make sense that this thing, only some people take effort and some people don't. Because the issue is that if it's created in one place, it becomes everyone's problem after that. Right? Or a global.
Okay, so it's not a counter argument.
I
The
think
greenhouse gas.
I don't think this is a counter argument, because basically what it's saying is that even if it's not that the problem is local, where if it's done in a developing country, the greenhouse gases stay in a developing country, and if it's done in a developed nation, the greenhouse gases stay in a developed nation, where the developed nations can say oh, it doesn't matter to us how much greenhouse gas emission you do, it's not our problem, but it is their problem, right? Pragmatic is their problem. It will become their problem in 1 year or so. So
Okay.
yeah, so the idea is it's not a counter argument. It is an argument for the pragmatic side, because greenhouse gases are a global problem and thus need global cooperation to solve.
Okay.
Okay. Let's wrap this up with some counter arguments. Okay, what are the counter arguments here? Let's see. I would argue that it is unfair. It is unfair for developed nations to both bear a double burden. To bear a double burden of first cleaning up their emissions and also subsidize / this thing subsidize slash aid developing countries to stop their emissions. Given this thing. Given yeah, I think that's in general that we can use this as a counter argument. It's very easily rebuttable, but we need to show something for the other side, right? Then anyone have another counter example?
We could say that because the developing nations have a lot of dependency on coal and fuel,
Yeah.
and they do not have
This
that they do not have a good technological advantage to their um, to themselves, that they are now emitting more than the developed nations. Could we
so
say that?
we could say that developing nations haven't invested enough in this thing, enough in climate change, in green technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thus, this thing, and might not be incentivized to this thing do so if the economic burden is not placed on them and is rather placed on countries who successfully made a green transition. Does that make sense?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you could conclude with there and then rebut them with this thing. Rebut with this thing. It is not unfair, historically speaking.
Okay.
Then also for the other one, you could say that developing nations, this is blaming developing nations. Blaming developing nations entirely for this thing. For factors that were not in their control and more in control of developed countries. Because
Okay.
historical emissions were more in the hands of developed countries. What happened to that?
Mm-hmm.
It was not exactly in their hand. It was more in the hand of developing countries. So you're basically punishing them for not being for things they were not in control of.
Okay. Okay. So now that you have rebutted the counter arguments, now one more point came to my mind, and now I am confused as to where I could have put it.
Sure.
The point is, more than 30 countries are in the conflict zones at the present time. So it is more doing of the developed nations than the developing nations that conflict zones. Okay, I do not have clarity about this.
Yeah, that I don't know where that point is going. Think about it a bit.
Huh.
All right.
Okay.
So basically, the only information I had was CBDR,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that's really about it actually. That's the only specialized information I had, and we were able to write like a pretty decent essay. That is like very
Okay.
well structured and stuff. So it's not impossible. Just takes a bit of thinking, and I think all of you are capable of this because with a good framework you can do it. Now give me like 15 more minutes. Let's run through a legal reasoning question. I want to do a legal reasoning question.
Okay. Yes. No more questions. No, I'm
Yes.
through with my
Yes. Message me
queries. But
privately. Yes, message me privately
yes,
if you have any more doubts. I put my Telegram thing there. Let's do some legal reasoning stuff while we
I
split.
do have a legal reasoning question on my clipboard. If you want to take that, it's a good
I
question.
want
If
to make people solve it, and maybe if it comes up relevantly, like while we're solving the legal reasoning question, we can deal with it. Okay.
no, I have a fact. Like I have a whole question with the fact and
Um,
everything. I
sure. Yeah, why
copied it
not?
in my.
But then the issue is, I need to be able to like get my hands on it. No, like, can you put it on the chat or something?
Yeah. I have the complete question.
Oh,
That's why
sure. Also,
I
put it on the
pitched.
chat. Let's try. It'll be
Hmm.
fun. Awesome. Let's go. Okay, guys, I want all of you to attempt this question, and I'm going to show you how it's done, basically. Okay. Let me just see if did I have anything. Types of rules I feel is not really. We covered this. We covered this. We covered this. And I'm just checking the PPT to see if there's anything I didn't like tell you. Okay, no, there was just a question left. Okay. Awesome. Let's go. Okay. Oh, wow, that's long. Okay, legal principle. A state is under obligation not to allow activities within its jurisdiction to cause significant environmental harm to other states or areas beyond national control. A state must take all reasonable and appropriate measures to prevent or minimize such risks of harm. State M authorizes a private company to conduct deep sea oil drilling within its exclusive economic zone, approximately 80 kilometers away from the maritime boundary it shares with State N. The project is a flagship part of State M's National Energy Independence Plan. Although, once hold on, yeah. Deep sea. Okay, guys, you're reading this on your own also now, because even I'm kind of reading it for the first time now. It shares with State. The project is a flagship part of M's National Energy Independence Plan. Although State M conducted environmental impact assessment, it did not consult State N, despite proximity and potential shared environmental consequences. 3 months into the operation, a major underwater oil leaks. The leak, initially undetected, spreads across ocean currents and reaches N's coastal waters, damaging coral reefs and significantly damaging local fisheries. State N demands that State M suspend all drilling activities and pay damages and cooperate in cleanup process. State N accuses M of violating the principle of preventing transboundary environmental harm by failing to ensure adequate safeguards or failing to notify or consult it. State M responds that leak was accidental and drilling was entirely within its legal maritime jurisdiction. Okay, and that operations were not initially expected to cause any cross-border damage. Did State M violate the obligations of transboundary environmental harm by allowing drilling activities that resulted in pollution of technique? Awesome. This is a good question. Let's go. So, from what I've taught you, so okay, now are people like zoning out? Like, are people like leaving or something? That's okay. Okay, let's go to a new page. It doesn't matter. Okay, so I want somebody to frame the issue for me. Anyone? I think Stuti gave this question, so I don't think it's fair that she answers it, because like I feel she might already kind of like know some answers and shit. So like anyone else? Anupam, Trivati, Avishruti, Diksha, Dushyant, Kajal, Mithila, Pooja, Rashmi, anyone, Shivangi, anyone. Let's go answer this question like this tradition, like just from scratch, and let's get it done with. So first we're going to look for issues, stance, summary. And just one thing to note, I don't actually write these titles when I'm writing the thing. I just kind of like know them in my head. So I just write the issue. I don't write issue and then write down what the issue is. I just kind of write what the issue is. And I don't write stance and then write down my stance. I just tell people what I just tell the examiner what my stance is. So anyone want to help me with the question? Guys? Okay. Okay. Let's get started with this then. So I am going to make you guys give arguments though, so be prepared for that. I refuse to do this full question on my own. Like it's long. Okay, but whatever. Okay, issues. State M. So the issue is, did State M? Somebody was saying something?
Yash is saying that he's writing.
Oh, awesome, amazing, awesome. Just like give me thumbs up or stuff when I say that, so like I know like what's going on. Feels damn lonely here sometimes, but yeah. The issue is whether State M, by permitting its deep sea drilling within its jurisdiction, violated its obligation to prevent transboundary environmental harm affecting State M. That is a good thing. Did State M, by drilling within jurisdiction, violate obligation to prevent transboundary environmental harm affecting State N? All right, beautiful job, Yash. Top notch. I might have I misspelled something? Insane. Yeah, okay. State N. Good job, bro. Top notch. So now, I would suggest this stance. I want you guys to take the stance that it has essentially violated its obligation. M has violated its obligation to N. with regard to yada yada. With regard to the transboundary environmental harm affecting state N. Okay, that's a stance I want you guys to argue for because I feel it has more meat in it. Okay. Summary, like I said, we leave blank until we finish the argument. Okay. Okay, awesome stuff. Now, let's go. Arguments. Arguments in our favor. What should be argument one? How are we going to make arguments? I will do the first argument for you so then you guys get an idea of how we're supposed to make arguments. The rule says that this thing. A state is under obligation not to allow activities within its jurisdiction to cause significant environmental harms to other states or areas beyond national control. A state must take all reasonable and appropriate measures to prevent or minimize harm. So as per the rule, this thing. So first, one point we have is directly in the question itself. Okay, has this thing. So first, in the question, in the rule itself, it's mentioned that like they have to take reasonable care and appropriate measures. As per rule, country M must take reasonable and appropriate measures, right? Measures. Okay. So now, what proof is there that they have taken reasonable and this thing? State M has this thing conducted an EIA privately. So now, do you think this is a reasonable and appropriate measure? Just this. Guys? So if I was arguing for the fact that this thing, I think that M has not taken reasonable measures, I would say no. Taking a private EIA, without consulting the other party at greater risk is not this thing reasonable and appropriate. On top of that, I do not think this thing. On top of that, this thing. They should at least have measures for detecting leaks, right? At least within a day, right? By not having measures for such basic, obvious problems, obvious drilling issues, they essentially, by not having like measures for such basic, obvious drilling issues, they essentially, what's the word for it? They essentially have clearly not taken reasonable precautions. Okay, so that was the first argument we were making for this. Okay, what do you think of the argument, guys? Does anyone have anything to say about? Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, awesome. Somebody saying something as deep sea drilling is concerned. Yeah, awesome. Pooja Singh said, no, not enough. I would say, Yash, what happened? Yeah, no, like, oh no, oh, you're saying that no, it's not enough precaution. I was like, oh my god, did I not write enough? Okay, but yeah, this thing. Pooja Singh said no, not enough. Yash said no, not enough. As deep sea drilling, it should have taken other parties' consideration and also been aware of the risk of oil leakage. And the fact that the oil leakage happened and they didn't even notice until the other side noticed is very, unreasonable. Yes. especially when there's a foreseeable risk of cross-border impact. And the rule basically says this was very foreseeable. Yeah. And in fact, in this thing, so another rule we can say is that the drilling was entirely within its legal maritime jurisdiction. That will be state M's counter argument. So we'll save that for later. What else can we say? Give me another argument for this thing.
We can also say that the oil spillage was the direct foreseeable harm of a deep sea drilling, and also it's also climate. It's also a problem for the maritime issue as oil. Okay, I have not articulated this well enough. Sorry.
Think. No worries. But spillage is probably the most easy to foresee problem with deep sea drilling. And the fact that they weren't prepared for that okay, so before we write all this, we can write in the rule is clearly meant to essentially ensure duty of care between one country and another. And if people didn't know what like the duty of care phrase, you can just say to ensure that each country takes care of the other country with respect to its own actions. Okay, so the rule is clearly meant to ensure the duty of care between one country and another. Okay, spillage is the most easy to foresee problem in deep sea drilling, and the fact that they weren't prepared for that means that they have essentially abandoned their duty of care to the other country, especially when they were so close to the other country. Means they abandoned their duty of care. Okay, then I can't think of argument 3 right now, so I'm just going to write a counter argument and get back to rule 3. So counter argument is state M is saying that, oh wait, state M claims that the spill was within its maritime territory. There's a really easy counter argument for this. Can anyone tell me how to rebut this counter argument? There's a really easy rebuttal. Yash, you already said it. Yash has already said it. Amazing. So
Yes,
Yash
yes.
already said, good job by the way. Yash already said it, which means that because it doesn't matter where the damage is from, as long as it can pose a damage to your neighbor, it doesn't matter where the damage is exactly from. It's not like, oh, if it happens within your state, it's fine. It doesn't matter where the damage is happening from. It doesn't matter where damage. You rebut by saying it doesn't matter where the damage occurs from, because that is explicitly given in the rule. Explicitly mentioned in rule. Doesn't matter where damage comes. Doesn't matter where damage comes from. Damage comes from. Okay. So we've done a counter argument, we've done a rebuttal, and then we can conclude here, but we have one more argument to make. So XYZ should be held liable, M should be held liable. No worries, Bhai. Like, you guys will also be off. Like, thing is, like, once you do enough mocks, like, that's why I'm suggesting like the NLTI mocks, because like if you do enough of them, like it kind of just like clicks, man. Like at this point, I'm kind of like, and also I've done like 5 hours of this today, so like I'm kind of like very in the zone right now. So yeah. So third point. What can be a third point? Let me look at the question. Just practice. Exactly. Yash is right. This thing. Like everyone just needs to practice their mocks until like you get like, what do you call it? Everyone just needs to practice mocks until like everyone gets there, because like, see, for example, Yash is doing really well. Yash, have you done a lot of mocks so far?
Yes, I've done around 15 to 20 mocks.
How many?
15 to 20.
Oh, insane, bro. Okay, I think you've done more than me actually. But yeah.
How many did you did? Like
I started preparing like maybe I started I think probably around 15, but I was doing UPSC at the same time. So like I
good.
was primarily focused on like preparing for UPSC. So I started practice for NLSAT maybe like 2.5 weeks before the paper, maybe 2.5 to 3 weeks before the paper at max.
So I don't understand. Like UPSC to NLS, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, UPSC didn't seem like it was working out. So I decided I need to like, do something else in the meantime until like I figure out what's next. And like until I figure out whether to do it again, whether I should give it again, that sort of thing. So yeah, I know it's a bit strange.
I'm
But
sorry
yes.
if it sounds personal, but I wanted to ask that if you were preparing for UPSC, then you must have a little drop. So, like, does this bother you that the drop might to pose a bit of a challenge when you sit for like placements?
Thing is, yeah, I'm sure like it will count for something, but like the thing is, I don't regret it really. Like, you kind of have to
Mm.
take your chances sometimes. And the thing is, I'm pretty sure by the time I get to placements, like whatever skills I have will speak for themselves, really. Like, I'm pretty sure. And the thing is, like, I could agonize, oh, it was 2 years for me. But like a lot of other people in my class itself have like much longer gap years for UPSC, like much longer gap
Oh,
periods. So like, and they're very optimistic about it. They're like, they're the biggest go-getters in the class, and like, they're always on top of things and stuff. So like, it's kind of like, no matter what happens, I feel like I got a lot from like my UPSC prep, and I feel like whatever benefit, like whatever negative I have from like a gap year, I'm pretty sure I'll make up for it with something else. Because after
maybe I didn't want to point it in a negative direction, but gap is seen as a sort of kind of isolates you from the rest of the class, so to speak, because all my friends have been working and I am sitting at home. So it just
don't worry,
starts to feel like
when you
very
come to
isolating.
when you come to like NLSIU and stuff like that, everyone will have a couple of gap years actually. It's like I'd
Oh,
say, Panchila, good, but you don't have a gap year, I know, but like you're young, but like most like I'm talking to my roommate. Sorry, he's like making faces at me, but like a lot, at least I'd say about maybe 50 to 60% of the class has taken a gap year actually, at least.
oh, okay.
So it's like, and some of them have taken like insane gap years. Like I think somebody took like 4, 5 to 6 gap years, and now there's somebody who's 60 years old and they're kind of in our class. So like that's fun too. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is crazy.
and they're like really good at it. So like it like deep down it annoys me, but like at the other hand, it's kind of inspirational. Thoda sa. So like
Talk about calling.
yeah, exactly. So like yeah, there is a lot of
And
stuff there. So let's think
I
about
have
this.
a third point in my mind. I have a
Yes,
third point in
amazing.
my
So
mind. So the third paragraph says that the state M demands that state M suspends all the drilling activities and pay damages, and it is the least that the state M could do because their drilling project seems to have caused the problem. So so to pay damages and cooperate in the cleanup process is the least they can do to you know abate the problem that they have caused.
I'm so sorry. I think I'm kind of gassed. Can you write it down? Can you like type it down and say it a bit slowly? I'm sorry. I've been at it for like
Sure.
5 years. I'm so
It's
sorry.
a, yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
we have kept you for so long. I think we might not even let you have dinner.
Nahi,
Sorry, really sorry for that.
nahi, bhai, this is kind of a job. So like, if you're doing it, you better do it properly. We're going to do it properly. So let's do it
Yes,
properly.
yes, I'll type it out.
Also, if I might ask,
Yeah.
since we're sitting idle, how
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it?
How is NLS? It's very hectic. They have this very strange trimester system that makes everything very difficult. Like because like what people generally do in a semester, you're generally doing in a trimester. In like what you're supposed to do in like 4 to 5 months, you're kind of doing in like 2.5 to 3 months, including exams.
Okay.
And there's a lot of like daily readings and stuff. But I'm having a much better time than I was doing UPSC, so that's good. It's all, and like the teachers here are like really good. Like we complain about them a lot, but like compared to a lot of other laws, like most other law schools, like these guys are like really top notch because they actually put a lot of effort into teaching and stuff. And in terms of, uh, And like you're gonna, if like once you guys get here, you're gonna really like the library. It's like the best place in campus. That's there, and you'll actually want to sit in the library. It's like it's a library that's that nice. And teaching wise, they are very good, but expect a lot of like work, expect a lot of project work. Like I'm currently swamped with like 3 projects, and I kind of and I'm going to get to them soon. And like, yeah, you are going to get a lot of project work, and also the academics in terms of exams and stuff are going to be very brutal. Your first trimester will be easy, but ever since then, like everyone's marks have just like kind of nosedived, like very seriously. So like everyone's kind of concerned now. So expect a very brutal, like thoda brutal academic thing, academic career, and like hectic, but everyone finds time for like having fun too. So it's not that bad also. It's not like like it's not like it's like a coaching, like coaching center sad or something.
Nice.
Yes, it's yeah. Okay, so the state ends demand for cooperation in the cleanup process is the least they could do, as the ecological loss is caused by the spill primarily, and if the project had not been there and the spillage and the subsequent issue would not have been there in the first place. So yeah, cooperation is the least they could do. This is fair. So once again, so basically, yeah, you could say that it's the least they could do, and liability should be placed on M, and therefore M should be held liable. So, and now what we're going to do is we're going to summarize the arguments really quickly. So first, summary of the arguments. We are saying essentially we are taking the stance because this thing, the precautions taken by M were not sufficient or reasonable. Okay, so that's point 1. That's this point, right? That's all we have to write for the first point. Okay, comma, the intention of the rule was to promote duty of care to neighboring countries for situations like this. Okay, awesome. Comma, again, this thing, state the least they can do, M can do, is cooperate due to spill being their direct fault. And now I would underline a few things. So I would say, I would underline precautions taken by M were not sufficient and reasonable. So control U. Intention of the rule was to promote duty of care. Control U. This thing, least they can do is cooperate because the spill is their direct fault. Control U. Then I would say state M has conducted an EIA private, not taking an EIA without consulting the party greater this is not reasonable. They should have measures for detecting leaks. The line. Then rule is clearly meant to ensure duty of care. I will underline. Can you guys see what I'm underlining?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I underline that. Spillage is most easy to foresee problem. Yeah. I mean, that's like the first problem. Like even if you tell a kid about deep sea drilling, they'll be like, doesn't it spill out? Like that's like the first thing they think about, right? And abandon duty of care. If the professor reads just the underlined bits also, they'll kind of they'll understand exactly what you're talking about. Then this thing is the least they could, cooperation for cleanup is the least they could do, underline. And then ecological loss is caused by spill primarily. That's all we've got so far. Then counter argument, the spill was in their maritime territory. We'd underline spill was in their maritime territory. Rebut explicitly mentioned in rule doesn't matter where damage comes from. This pretty much you'll have to rebut, but like when you write it in the exam, underline, but when you write it in the exams, you'll have to write like a longer thing. Like for rebuttal also, you can't just write 6 words. You'll have to write like slightly longer, at least 1 sentence or 2 sentences. Conclude, M should be held liable and thus should aid in cleanup, and pay reparations, etc. And we've solved it basically. So do you guys understand the format we want to take here? Like, don't overanalyze like the reasoning argumentation, but just think about points in your favor and write them down. That is all you need to do, and just segment them so that it's very clear for this thing. I don't put 1, 2. I'd suggest not putting 1, 2. If I'd suggest not putting like the numbers, but other than that, you basically have the idea of what you have to do. Yeah, this is what, like, I feel if you write this, you will get repeatedly, you will get quite decent marks on average. It's better to write one good, it's better to write a lot of decent answers rather than one amazing answer and then like completely falter on another question or like not finish another question. So this is, I feel, the fastest and like probably the most comprehensive way of writing these questions. You understand?
But
And let's see how many words.
underlining take a lot of time.
Does it take a lot of time?
Underlining the
Pardon?
important arguments. Does it take a lot of time?
It
Am I
does.
audible?
Yeah, slightly. There's a bit of like disturbance from your end. Can you speak up, thoda sa?
Can you hear me now?
1 second. This is Yash, right? I assume.
Yes, I am.
Okay, awesome. Let me know.
So I am saying ki does underlining the important arguments help in the exam?
Yes. Go
And
on.
wouldn't it take a lot of time to just underline the important arguments?
I would say it takes like maybe like 10, like since you're writing, you already kind of know what's important. So it takes maybe like 10 seconds. Sometimes I do it after the paper is over, like after I finish the paper and go back to it. Sometimes the mocks I did it after. If I had time after the paper, I would go back to do it. And sometimes I would just do it really quickly in like within like 10, 20 seconds while I was after writing the question itself, so that I don't have to come back to that question later. I would suggest do it right after you write the question. It takes maybe 20 seconds. I think you guys can spare 20 seconds because overall you're giving it maybe like five legal reasoning questions, 100 seconds, maybe 110 seconds. I think you can give 2 minutes to make like your answer neater, if possible. I'd say like it also cuts. The thing is, when you do underlining also now, you don't really need to write it now in terms of points. If you underline and just leave it, it's pretty clear what it means. You don't have to over explain yourself. You can shorten your points also, but as long as you underline and keep them ready.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's personally what worked for me. Okay. Does anyone else have any other doubts? Okay. Pooja Singh, what is up? Pooja?
Hi, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
So I have one doubt regarding essay writing. So what happens is, like if I know the topic even a bit or very well, then I can pretty much make my arguments very smoothly. But for example, if a question comes in the paper that I'm not like too much accustomed with, so how do I tackle that type of question? Like for example, we did climate change wala topic. I knew pretty much thoda about news around it, so I can handle that. But like what about other topics? Suppose अगर UCC या फिर ऐसे कुछ like very extreme कोई topic आ जाता, so how to handle that?
Okay. Generally, I would suggest try to like avoid something that requires like if you obviously don't have that specific information and like this thing you are getting an essay on that topic, I would obviously try to avoid it because frankly for me I do better in in like more general topic essays where like you don't need too much specialized information, because personally that's my strategy, because I feel personally specifically studying GK for essays is might be a slight waste of time because the essays they can ask you are so wide ranged. Obviously know like the important topics. For example, right now a lot of stuff is about energy, uh, geopolitics and all that sort of stuff, so you need to know basics of that about let's just say um, perhaps about this thing, current warfare and all that sort of stuff. So perhaps that is something you could look into, but also legal theories are a pretty good source of like essay topics especially for the NLSAT LLB paper. But when it comes to things you don't know, I think, for example, in the question itself, they do give you a lot of information about UCC, right? For example, in your question. For example, in my question about 3-language policy, I started off with maybe 3 facts I knew about this thing, 3-language policy. I knew vaguely what it was from the question. I knew that people from Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala don't like it now. And then I knew it already I knew it's a state subject and it already ruins relationships between center state. So with Uniform Civil Code, what do you know about that? You will probably also know 3 to 4 things, right? And then you can make reasonable assumptions from those things. So in the question also, you get a lot of information, but the real name of the game, because that will all knowing, if you have to write an essay on what you know, what you definitively know, that leaves you in a bit of a shaky space because it makes it such that you have to keep doing more and more work. But what I was aiming for is I should be able to write 6 to 7 points on anything as long as I know basically what it is. And that is, I feel, the sort of reasoning you should be aiming for, the sort of general awareness. Like, you kind of know what the UCC is. You know it's an attack. You could say that some people argue that it's an attack on secularism. You could say that some people argue that this thing, it's good for the country because it makes an even playing field between people of all religions. You could say that there are some certain aspects of it that are like not very well looked upon. For example, it's this thing, attitude towards live-in couples and all that sort of stuff. But for example, these are like the 3 to 4 points I know. I can bring in like some family law stuff, but like it's unnecessary right now. But even with these 3 to 4 points, you can make an essay just by breaking it into economic points. What is the economic value of having a common law set, common family law set for different religions? What is the value in making common laws for different religions? What is the justice value? Obviously, it makes it a better even playing field, and can prevent certain religions from feeling disenfranchised. And this thing can essentially lead to judicial parity between communities. Then after that, pragmatically, it makes it easier for judges to decide, as they don't have to refer to many different sources of law. Because, for example, now if you have to follow Mohammedan law, you also have to find out what is an essential practice under Mohammedan law, right? And for that, you have to refer to Mohammedan texts. And that becomes a whole other thing, because how do you decide what is an essential text? Obviously, they have the Quran, but they have other commentaries and all. And now the judge himself has to go decide, hi, which one of these do I have to use to make this decision, right? And that leads to a lot of discussion, and that is frankly unnecessary. You could say that, oh, why not make it a common statute for the judge to essentially follow, right? So you can point like that. And the point is, it's important to have time to think about your essay, which is why you read it at the beginning, and then you break it into silos: economic points, justice points, pragmatic points, social harmony points. In this one, you can make it a society point. Is this the sort of thing that would make society more harmonious or less harmonious? Think like that. And that's frankly that's the best you can do if you really come across an essay you don't have that many points for. And you can write a decent enough essay. I didn't have that much to say about economic, about environmental thing, but we managed to get at least a good at least 7, 8 points, 9 points. And I think that's more than enough for a 15-mark paper. I mean, for a 15-mark essay. So I think, yeah, that should.
Noted. Thank you so much.
Gabriel,
Yes.
if we,
Just
I'm sorry, if we, like you
Oh.
said, that we read the essay topic beforehand and think about the points before getting to the essay, like in the 2 hour time.
Yeah,
So if
yeah,
I
you basically
scribble something in
yeah.
pencil on the last page, and if I suppose forget to erase it, or will they penalize me for it?
They're not that serious about it, but to your best, try to not mark too much on the page, because they might get suspicious if you're writing a lot of stuff there, but they don't take it now seriously. Also, I'll double check with other people. Maybe it was just my center, because I was in Delhi and nobody cared much.
Oh.
So yeah, and a lot of people, and my exam center was very heavily stuffed. So maybe, what do you call it? I'll ask other people also and see how seriously they took marking the question paper in their centers also, and get back to you guys. I think you've reached out to me also, so I can respond there also, on chat also. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Hold on. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Let's call it a day then.
Can I ask a brief question?
Of course. No worries. I'm here.
So can you hear me perfectly?
I can hear you perfectly.
Perfect. So between your conversation with Stuti, I heard you said to limit the essay to 2 pages, to around 200 words,
Yeah,
250 words.
2 pages or 2.5 pages if your handwriting is really big.
Yeah. So NLS, what they do is they don't prescribe a word limit. Instead, they give a page limit, right? They give.
Yeah, they mandate a page limit on you.
Yeah.
Basically, 1 second. If I'll just check if I have the sample paper, I can just double check that because suddenly even I have a doubt now. Because they mandate you a page limit automatically because you have to write on their sheet, right?
Yes.
So hold on. Anish sent me these a while ago. I'll just double check really quickly and be back because I think at one point they used to tell you how many words to write in. Because I remember at one point in my second year, they told us to write less words. So I just want to double check this. Okay.
I heard they say to write 500 words around.
Yeah, exactly. They say to write 500 words and they say for legal reasoning to write 250.
Yes.
So basically, that's what I'm saying. If you're writing like one side for legal reasoning, you should be writing two sides for essay, or maybe 2 sides and a bit on the next page, or 2.5 page at maximum. Don't write more than that. That's because frankly, like you're basically writing that much more for like 15 marks, and for 3 more marks, basically, you're writing an extra page and more. Hello.
Yes, but what I want to ask is I am writing around 400 to 450 words.
Yeah.
Is it too much or is it like
it's fine?
Vomiting?
How many sides is it coming to? See, too much is more of a pragmatic concern about finishing the paper.
Okay.
If as long as you're fitting it within the mock thing, it's fine. Try not to go to some absurd number 700 or something. Keep it within the limits of 500. I think you'll be fine.
Okay.
Don't balloon it massively because some poor guy has to read that also.
Yes.
And yeah, keep it within 500. Don't worry. If 450 is how much I write also vaguely. I write 2.5 sides basically. 2.5 sides because handwriting is kind of I fit maybe 8 words in one line, so I kind of have to write a bit extra. Yeah. So I generally average between 2 sides and 2.5 sides. So 450 words basically. That works.
So it's nice, works.
Huh?
Yes, I think you could start giving the subjective answers in the mock itself, like the printouts of the mocks, so that you can understand how much points you can fit in the given space, so that you don't think about the words.
Yeah. That is a good idea.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Got it.
Pardon, Yash, were you saying something?
No, just saying I got it.
Okay, okay. All right. Okay. Does anyone have any other doubts? Okay. I think we've basically covered what the basics and what the essential practices of legal reasoning and essay writing are. So I think we basically covered what I planned out for today. I had a different question planned out, but since we already did a legal reasoning question, and we did an impromptu one, it's probably better this way. So I think we've covered everything on my mandate today. And also it's pretty late for you guys also and me. So I think we should call this a day. I hope the session was useful. I'd suggest from now on for just practice, I'd suggest daily mock. If you can do daily mocks, or at least weekly, twice mocks. Daily practice, writing answers within 10 minutes, writing legal reasoning answers within 10 minutes and essays within 15 to 16 minutes is suggestible. That's what I used to do also. Because I wouldn't get time to write a full mock sometimes, I would just write one answer, but have a 10-minute timer on it. Okay. So that's something I used to do. And then reading editorials and actively reading them, marking out, oh, this is his introduction. This is how he's placing his first argument. Now there's the second argument. Actively analyzing and breaking apart arguments on the screen. On in the editorials. And I think that's about the best you can do. Obviously, keep up with your part A. It will naturally help you for your part B because of the GK and stuff like that. But I'd say 55. 55 is safe. Like personally, I mucked up part A thoda sa because like I forgot to write like 7 answers. Like I forgot to write like I forgot to mark like 7 answers. So I mucked up part A and I got 51 or 52, which was a barely scraped through mark. And luckily I got like really good marks in part B because like I was rank 1 in part B, and that like gave me a good rank, good enough rank to actually like, enter. But you know, yeah, I would suggest 55 because it's not safe to assume that like you'll do really well in part B because part B is a bit tough. So aim for 55 marks in part A as well, 55 and above. Okay. 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 Got it. Okay. Anything else? I think I'm this thing. I think we're running out of time right now.
This
So
was
I-
really helpful. I'm sorry to interrupt again, but this was really, really helpful. You have no idea how many doubts I had and how much you have narrowed down the solutions for me, because I've been struggling with this since the last 12 days after I gave my DUGA CUET wala attempt.
Yeah.
And I had talked to a senior of yours, Smriti ma'am, and she told me that I should take, that the NLTI also has a session.
Yeah.
1 hour wala session. So I would have been a bit skeptical about it because my problems were definitely not something that I can get solutions to in 1 hour.
Yeah. Fair.
So can you
Fair.
please return with this session after a week or two so that I can
Yeah.
ask
Sure.
if
Sure.
I have
Sure.
any follow-up questions that I...
Of course.
Thank you so
I'll
much.
let Anish know about this. Ideally, it'd be great if you guys could let Anish know that like you guys
Yes,
would
I've
like an
already
assessment.
texted him that this was really
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. So that this thing. Yeah. So that like because technically like he's my boss and stuff. So
Yeah. Understood. Thank
yeah.
you so much. And
Koi
have a
nahi, koi
great
nahi.
week.
Good job for staying along this long, you guys. I hope it was useful, and I hope like you guys got a lot. And please do mocks and all that sort of stuff. And more importantly, please rest well. Like don't take too much stress about it. The better rested you are before the paper, the better it's going to go. Frankly, always like as usual, take like before writing mocks also take good rest, and you'll notice that you write a lot better. All right. I'll take my leave, you guys. I'll have to bounce. Thank you for like the comments. That's really
Thank you
nice.
so much.
Yes, thank you guys for staying here for this long and listening to me yap. See you guys. Good night.